Supervisor and Vice Chair Supervisor Geraldo Sandoval, and Member Supervisor Jake McGoldrick. Okay. Welcome to the Land Use Committee. We're having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to redo this. Thank you and welcome to the Land Use and Economic Development Committee. I am Chair Supervisor Sophie Maxwell, and I'm joined by Vice Chair Supervisor Geraldo Sandoval and Member Supervisor Jake McGoldrick. Our clerk is Ms. Giacino, Deborah Messino. Sorry, Deborah. And I want to thank the folks from Channel 26 for bringing us live. Madam Clerk, will you read the first item, please?
Item number 1 is an ordinance adding section 6.12 to the San Francisco Park Code to prohibit on a trial basis from May 27, 2006 and continuing for 6 months through November 25, 2006, motor vehicle traffic on Saturdays in Golden Gate Park on John F. Kennedy Drive between Kezar Drive and Transverse Drive, Arguello Boulevard, Conservatory Drive East and Conservatory Drive West, 8th Avenue, Bowling Green Drive between John F. Kennedy Drive and Middle Drive East, and Stowe Lake Drive between Stowe Lake Drive East and John F. Kennedy Drive, to require reports from the Recreation and Park Department and Department of Parking and Traffic pertaining to the Saturday road closures, to require the Golden Gate Park Concourse Authority to share its own data and reports that are relevant to the Saturday road closures with the aforementioned departments, to require a hearing on the Saturday road closures before the Board of Supervisors or a board committee and making environmental findings. And on an additional note, the committee has received a Planning Department Certificate of Determination of Exemption Exclusion from the environmental view.
Thank you. Supervisor Jake McGoldrick has brought this item to us. Supervisor McGoldrick.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Chair Maxwell, and colleague Sandoval. First of all, let me thank you for setting aside this valuable time on a Friday afternoon. I know this committee has so much business before it. It was very, very gracious of you both to agree to be able to set this aside so that we could get right to the issue, because people, I see there are quite a few people here. And rather than having people come to a hearing with 3 or 4 or 10 other items and perhaps sit here waiting for hours and hours and hours, we will be able to cut right to the chase and hear from the proponents and the opponents, the advocates, and see, try to work this out. So cutting right to the chase then on this issue, this is certainly an issue that's been around, as I think everybody knows, with a fair amount of friction, contention, for not just 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years, but in fact for 39 years. And while Jack Benny could not be here tonight, this afternoon, 39 years is a long time to wait. And I think it's very important that we pause for a minute and just, as a thumbnail sketch, certainly look at the most recent history and understand that when this issue was brought forth in 2000, there was one election and 2 competing measures. And I think the electorate, I think wisely, and I actually agreed with the electorate afterwards and said, okay, if the electorate wants us to wait, we will wait. And said, it wasn't ready for prime time yet. And as a result, when this issue came to us in about 2002 or so, I said certainly that I felt that we should abide by what we had come to know through the electorate. They said, let's wait until we get this concourse garage built. I said I wasn't going to support it at the Board of Supervisors at that time, and I said I would be happy to reintroduce it when the important issue regarding particularly the garage was addressed, the DeYoung reopened, concourse traffic patterns reestablished, and that's where we are today. And I think we have met, and I think that we have seen met the criteria which make it, I think, a very viable issue to put forth here today. I will be looking for support not only from my colleagues here, but from all 11 of our, the other 10 of our colleagues, and hope we send this to the full board and move on this and get it in place and have an opportunity to look and see what are some wrinkles that may still exist. I think a lot in anticipation of this issue, a lot of the issues which people are concerned about have already been addressed. One of them let me address because people are sort of going back and forth with perhaps misunderstandings, hopefully perhaps misinterpretations and not disinformation. Disinformation is a tool that I think should never be brought into the public arena for a good, honest debate. Informed dissent, informed consent, that's fine. I think that the question of access, and access for all, let alone access for the disabled community, has arisen quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. And I think it's very important to understand the access for the disability community and you know, for members of the disability community is going to be addressed. There's even some more clarification language I think the city attorney will be able to refer to here today. That access to the DeYoung Museum, starting there, certainly is not cut off. It's very, very simple. Enter the concourse on a Saturday, as you would. You could even do it on a Sunday now. And from the south side, make a loop, make a circle, drop off, and then go back out. No problem. In terms of some of the issues around the conservatory and having some more in furtherance of some of the greater access for members of the disability community, there will be a presentation of some of those places where new parking opportunities will be made available in actually 1, 2, 3, 4 different locations. So that'll be new, and that should actually be something that should be able to be incorporated on Sundays as well. So that will, in fact, be an enhancement of the current situation that exists on Sundays. I think I don't want to spend too much time, because I think we all know the basic issues. This is a 6-month trial, and I do really, truly mean a trial period. I think that we will learn a lot, and in fact, any tweaking or adjustments that we can make, we don't have to wait until the termination of 6 months. If we discover something, I don't think it's rocket science. We will be able to address some issues as we go along. I believe that anybody and everybody who wants to participate in the posing of questions and the proposal of solutions is more than welcome. Everybody is welcome on this issue. We have a long, long list of folks who've been involved in this, again, for many years. And I do say, you know, the 11 of us as supervisors sit here, and in many ways we're sort of, I sometimes say, traffic cops for ideas. And I do wish that this, were a smoother road, I guess that's the metaphor of the day. But I think a lot of the issues that have come up have been addressed. I think it's an important opportunity for people to clarify today. I wish everybody could come to an agreement, but a lot of times it doesn't happen, and that's our job, is to try to figure out whether or not the collective sagacity of your elected legislative body feels that something is right. I do indeed feel at this juncture that it is right. As I say, about 4 years ago I stood in the way of putting this thing through because it wasn't ready. I think it's ready today. I think it's time to go ahead, and I would certainly ask that everybody talk to one another as best we can, and I hope we'll make a good decision here today. Madam Chair, I wanted to ask if the City Attorney might address the issue, one of the issues I just, or if you want to wait till a little bit later, Mr. Mullenwood, I leave it up to you. A little later, I leave it up to you.
I'm running some copies right now.
Absolutely, I know. And we should certainly thank Mr. Mullenwood because, right down till, 10 and 20 and 12 and 8 minutes ago, Mr. Mullenwood is working with some of the stakeholders who are trying to make sure we address some parts and pieces of the issues people have raised. In terms of staff, are there any other members, because I always first like to ask members of staff, thank you, Madam Chair, for these cards. Are there members of staff, our city staff from our departments who would like to address any aspect of this issue? And I would first and foremost call on our city staff. And you don't have to right now. If you want to wait till a little later, say so, but our city staff always gets priority. Susan?
Thank you. Susan Misner with the Mayor's Office on Disability. Thank you for working with our office. I want to say that the Mayor's Office on Disability is coming a little late to the issue, and so we have not had a chance to have a formal hearing with the Mayor's Disability Council or any other forum for the community, so I'm not speaking for the disability community as a whole. We have heard from a number of people in the disability community who have raised some concerns about access with the park closure, and I do want to speak to the disability access issues. Just to give some background, for people who do not have mobility impairments, when the park is closed, they can drive anywhere within a half-mile radius of the park and walk roller skate, bike, or skateboard into the park and have complete access to that. For people with mobility impairments, that's really not an option. They need to be able to find an accessible place to park. They need to be able to get to their destination within a block or so of where they've parked. Similarly, we've heard from people with cognitive impairments, specifically the ARC has clients with developmental disabilities who have worked at the Conservatory of Flowers and take taxis to that conservatory and have not been able to have the taxis enter when the park is closed. So we would need to be able to address some of those issues. Without measures addressing those issues, our office would be very concerned about passage of this legislation. But that said, I want to thank the Bicycle Coalition and the staff in your office, as well as the City Attorney's Office, for very actively trying to come up with some solutions. I wanted to highlight the solutions that have been discussed and that I would strongly urge be in place before an additional closure day, and that, in fact, would be implemented on Sundays as well. First, and I believe that the legislation has been modified to incorporate at least most of this, we would need to make explicit that people with disability placards in cars can enter the park at 8th Avenue for the purpose of driving to an accessible parking space. Second, we would need to have additional permanent and temporary accessible parking spaces for people with disabilities. That would be off of JFK Drive. We have identified a number of spaces, but there's some work still to be done there. Third, we would have reduced fee parking for people with disabilities in the concourse garage, and that would be to provide additional parking spaces that would not be available on the surface. And fourth, we would have drop-off zones, both for people without disabilities and especially for people with disabilities on a couple of locations that would make it easier for people such as ARC clients to be able to get to their destinations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Misner. And I believe it is your understanding, it's my understanding that those issues will be addressed, and we're working as expeditiously as possible on that.
I would appreciate the committee's support in making sure that the issues that cannot be incorporated in the legislation today, and the city attorney will be able to explain which those are and why, that we make the commitment to have those addressed before this is fully adopted and implemented.
We will discuss this, of course, as we go forward. Certainly, I think my understanding as far as ASAP. And we will ask our departments, because we physically can't go out and do the work ourselves. Otherwise, I would go out there and do it myself. But we will have to depend on our departments and ask them to do that. I wanted to, if I could, call on another department, the Department of City Planning. Department of City Planning, in terms of the environmental review issue, I wonder if you would present what the documentation is here and the determination is here.
Through the chair, I'm Rick Cooper of the department staff. If I
you.
could, I'd like to defer to the city attorney to respond to that.
Oh, that's fine. Sure. Well, what I wanted to just simply have you do is enter into the record what is already in the paper record. It's the certificate of determination of exemption exclusion from environmental review. So, in other words, do you just want to address that for 2 seconds, and you can summarize it if you want. It's in the record. There's a tight and narrow text of about a page, and as I recall, about a half a page and a third. Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
There is an exemption under CEQA class 6, section 15306 of CEQA,
Right.
that provides an exemption for projects in which we are collecting information for future analysis. And this project appears to fit exactly within that class. And Paul Maltzer, the Environmental Review Officer, completed this exemption for this project.
Okay, thank you very much. And I hope you wish Mr. Maltzer well. I know he's had he, at the last minute, wasn't able to be here.
Thank you, I will.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. Very well. Any other staff that wish to come up now? If not, I'm going to go right to the public, and we have a lot of cards here from the public. Very well. And Madam Chair, I wonder, can we set the time at 2 minutes? We have about 50, 60, 70 people here. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor, I wanted to offer a couple comments.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. I am listed as a sponsor, and I thought that I should say a few things, hoping that people in their public comment might say, give some response that would either support or help me change my mind if that's necessary. I think when people add their names as sponsors, it's similar to what people do or say in the law as being somewhat like a rebuttable presumption. I am a sponsor. That's something that is open to a rebuttal, and I would be willing to change my mind. However, I am a strong supporter of this measure. And a couple of things that come to mind are that, first, just kind of from the heart, I've been to the park many times. It's been my experience many times that it really does resemble more of a parking lot than a park. And I know that's becoming somewhat of a cliche. It's even a joke. I've seen it on some cartoons, but that is my experience at times on Saturdays, notwithstanding all the very rational arguments about the need to bring people to the museum, especially given the new parking structure there. It's a park, and that should be its first use, and we should do everything we can to promote it being experienced in that manner. I have to say also that I understand that some of the people who are not so supportive of this issue are the very people who signed a ballot measure in support of closure of the park should the parking lot for the DeYoung get built. At least that is my understanding, that many of the people who are now in opposition to this measure did sign a ballot argument in its favor, saying that if the parking structure was built, that they would support, in fact, building or closure of the road. And I find that a little bit troubling. I also want to point out as a theme that it is a test, and while it does open the door to a permanent closure, which is what people are afraid of, it is simply a test at this point, and I think it's worth emphasizing that at every turn, that we should see if this works. The experience on Sunday is lovely, as is the experience in other cities like New York, where we do something similar. So with that, I'm happy to listen to the public testimony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I wonder if I call up Cheryl Brinkman. And again, I'd like to go pro and con to get back and forth different positions for and again. So is Cheryl Brinkman, would you like to come up and present? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Cheryl Brinkman. I'm the chair of the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Committee, and I can also speak today on behalf of Walk San Francisco. Specifically, a couple of issues that I'd like to speak on very briefly. The first, which I believe two of the supervisors have already touched on, is the Music Concourse Garage. We do have the volume numbers for the garage that were given to us by Mike Elsey of the Concourse Authority just last week. And the garage on the most busy day in the museum was at 85% capacity based on the EIR study that was done of the 800-car parking garage and what the turnover rate is. Most weekend days it seems to be at about 55% capacity, occasionally going up to 70% capacity. And also, I would like to point out that there are 4,000 free parking spaces in the park on Sunday when that section of JFK is closed to driving and to parking. We really think that the garage truly does provide the DeYoung and the Academy sufficient parking for now and for the future. Their attendance rates at the DeYoung are right in line with what the EIR estimate was for number of visitors per year. And the EIR also noted that after the novelty of the new buildings wore off a little, the attendance numbers would most likely stabilize. I'm going to put up a... Yeah, there we go. The large, of course, 800-space parking garage in the middle. All of the other items shown there in pink are actually the rest of the parking that is available when JFK is not accessible to cars for parking or for driving on Sunday as they would be on Saturday. A couple of key issues that we want to point out for the disability community is there is a parking lot behind McLaren Lodge that's approximately 50 spaces that we were very surprised to find out is pretty much free, uncontrolled access parking. Yes, there actually is still free parking in San Francisco, and hopefully we'll ruin that for people by changing that to, we think if we put it to 3-hour parking, that will give the Conservatory of Flowers ample parking in that place, and some of those can be striped for ADA parking spaces. Another spot that will help the Conservatory out with disabled parking is the edge of Bowling Green Drive here, where the barricade is right now on Sundays. It can be moved a little closer to the Conservatory, which would free up about 6 to 8 parking spaces, which we think could be striped for disabled use only, and that would help quite a bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just one quick question. Ms. Brinkman, are you aware of the other locations that are being considered for access for parking and drop-off, both parking and drop-off for the members of the disability community?
Well, we have discussed lowering, of course, the fee in the parking garage for disabled access, and then also...
That, by the way, so the general public understands, is not a decision that we are authorized to make. That would be something that would have to go over to the Concourse Authorities, MCCP.
Right.
And they would have to decide that. Right.
And we do think there are a number of other spots that could be restriped for disabled access, specifically on the other side of the Academy on Middle Drive East.
If we could get that map back up for just a second. Thank you. Okay. And
On,
maybe you could,
on this side of the Academy on Middle Drive East, you can actually access the Academy in both the old design and the new design. You will be able to access the Academy from Middle Drive East. And I think it would be a relatively simple matter to put some disabled accessible parking spots there.
Okay. And just so while you've got it up here, members of the public, can we keep the map up for just a second while I got you up here? Also, we're talking about the entrance at 8th and Fulton. Can you put your finger on there for a minute?
Yes, that would be,
8th and Fulton.
that would actually, this map actually has it labeled 6th, but that's actually 8th that comes in.
Yeah, okay. I can't actually see it that well, but that's right. On either side of 8th, before you would get to JFK Drive, we would be talking about making it possible,
Yes,
making
exactly.
disability parking available there. And, okay, and then I don't know if you've looked at the part over here on, what's it called, Bowling Green?
Yes, on Bowling Green,
there,
which is right
and
here.
So right in there, and so, okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, I'll call the cards in order unless we get too many people from one side or the other, and then we'll make sure to try to balance it out by calling the pros and cons. A lot of people have not put in favor or opposed, the little cards have, so we'll just call them in order as much as we can, and we just don't want to have too much from one side or too much from the other, back and forth. So, again, Michael Smith. Now, Dennis Kern, you're a member of the city family. I don't know if you want to get up in this order, or you can get up whenever you want. But I've got a card here for Dennis Kern. But Dennis Kern, you're a public employee, so whenever you want, you wouldn't have the same time limits if you need. And you can come up or not come up whenever you want, Mr. Kern. Then Robert Adams, Carolyn Blair, and Stuart Stone. Thank you.
My name is Michael Smith. I'm with Walk San Francisco, the pedestrian safety and advocacy organization. And I'm sure you expect me to talk about pedestrian safety and also the importance of having a safe recreation space in the park. This is especially true considering that a few years ago, Rosaleva was crossing the crosswalk on JFK Drive, and she was hit by an automobile and killed. This is not appropriate for Golden Gate Park. This should be one of the safest places to be. And also, if you go to the park on a Sunday, you can see what a beautiful situation it is. And so instead of talking more about pedestrian safety, I need to talk a bit about a letter that was sent by the DeYoung that was signed by the president of the Board of Trustees. The problem with the letter is that it was full of misinformation and deceit, and unfortunately the patrons of the DeYoung are the victims of it. They were told to contact the supervisors, but told to do so based under misinformation. So I want to go specifically in some of the items of misinformation there. The letter states that a poll finds the road closure to be unpopular. But if you look at these poll results here, you might not be able to read these. These are from a David Binder poll from year 2000, and found that there was 2-to-1 favor of extending the road closure to Saturday. The letter from the DeYoung also stated that JFK Drive is needed for parking. But if you go to the parking garage now, you will see that there are many, many empty spaces, including on Sundays. There are, in fact, only 140 free parking spaces that are on JFK Drive that are close to the DeYoung, and that's not very many considering that there's 4,000 or 5,000 free spaces in the park. Another issue with the letter is that it never mentioned that the museum before supported Saturday closure. The letter actually stated that that the Saturday closure, after the garage is open, would ensure access to the DeYoung Museum for all San Franciscans, including families with children, seniors, and disabled. And also, they intentionally didn't mention that it was only a 6-month trial period. So we need an honest dialogue here so we can find out how to make this work for all users. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I wonder if I could please pause for a moment. I said I want to get some balance. If I could please call Dede Wilsey up. Dede Wilsey and John Buchanan have requested, and I think that's only proper, of course. So, if you'd hold up just a minute, Carolyn. You want to, as I said, get both sides, and I hadn't had a card yet. No, Carolyn.
Supervisor McGoldrick, just one technical thing.
Yeah.
People in the back are requesting that something be done. We can't hear you speak.
Oh, that the echoic effect in this place is horrendous. I know. Yeah. Okay, we'll do what we can. How's that? 1, 2, 3? Any better? Okay. Thank you. We can blame echo. You had to go back and read our Greek mythology. Thank you.
Hello, Supervisors. I'm Dede Wilsey, President of the Fine Arts Museums. This is
John Buchanan, new kid on the block.
Okay.
I would like to respond to, first of all, the comments about Prop G, the ballot argument. It was written in the year 1998. In the year 1998, the public was going to pay for our museum. I was supposed to raise $44.1 million from the private sector. The museum was going to be between 225,000 and 250,000 square feet, and the budget was approximately $100 million. As you know, the city paid for nothing. I raised $202 million. The museum is 293,000 square feet, and the budget, as I said, was $202 million. I would like to mention also that at that time, my husband was alive, my dog was alive. We were not in a war against terrorism. The whole world is different. In short, almost nothing that applied in 1998 is true today. And we, at that time, were bringing in 333,000 visitors to that DeYoung Museum. We projected approximately 600,000 visitors our first year in the new DeYoung. That DeYoung, which I might add, we had no architects, no design, no idea what it would look like. Today, we've just had 920,000 visitors in our first 6 or 7 months since we opened. We do not in any way relate to that museum. And if I had been clairvoyant, I wouldn't be before you today. I would have a nice business going, predicting everyone's future, including my own. So our success is something that we are thrilled about, but it does not in any way accommodate what we have. The cars in the garage have to accommodate our staff. They have to accommodate other visitors to the park and our sister institutions. I can only imagine the success that the Academy of Science will have as well.
As you know, I've been the director of the DeYoung Museum and the Legion of Honor now for just 2 months. And our building has been open softly since the 1st of September. And just to echo Mrs. Wilsey's numbers, we have had 920,000 visitors to the DeYoung Museum since the soft opening of the building up until yesterday. What I'm concerned about is that we've not had the opportunity to be up and running for at least 12 months to really really know what the impact of the museum and its compelling nature is upon the citizens of our community. I'm very concerned that I believe my first and foremost job is to provide availability and accessibility of the great collections of the city of San Francisco and the exhibitions that we bring here to as many people as possible. So I'm concerned that by the closure of JFK near the museum, it prevents, prohibits, and actually dissuades those from around the Bay Area traveling to the park on Saturday, parking their car and coming to the museum, a third of which, I will remind you, is free to the public. That's one of the facts that we seldom really put forward, that a third of the new to young is open free of charge to the general public. And so particularly in these summer months, when we're planning exhibitions that are really targeted and aimed at underserved audiences, that we're hoping that we can make those resources as available as we possibly can to people on the weekends, which are really the days, Saturday and Sunday, that the families that we're trying to reach have the opportunity to come and be at the park. People say, well, what about the parking garage? And yes, it is great, and I'm glad that it was built under us. But as you know, we do not set the rates in that parking structure. And so it's not up to us to give it as free parking or anything of that nature, or even reduce the rates. So if you have a family that's thinking about coming to the park to see the museum, to have that experience, would you pay the parking in the parking garage, or would you look for the free park? I'd go for the free park.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chin, and welcome. Our next speaker, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, next speaker, and thank you. And Mr. Buchanan, I think it's still appropriate to say welcome to San Francisco.
Hello, San Francisco.
And welcome to San Francisco City Hall. Mr. Kern, did you want to speak now? Or then there's Robert McAdams, Carolyn Blair, and Stuart Stone. Mr. Kern is ahead of you, Carolyn. He's right there behind you. Mr. Kern is behind you. I called his name first. Did he want to come up? Do you want to come up now, Mr. Kern? Sorry, try to follow the order. We can. Thank you. Thank you.
That's fine.
That's right.
Thank you. Members of the committee, I'm Dennis Kern, the Director of Operations for the San Francisco Recreation and Park Department. Thank you for this opportunity. Recreation and Park Department supports a Sunday street closure within Golden Gate Park to provide wider opportunities for outdoor recreation in open paved areas that do not mix recreation and vehicle traffic patterns. Indeed, Golden Gate Park already offers this kind of recreation option in a variety of ways.
Yes.
As already described well here, on Sundays and holidays through the very successful closure of portions of JFK Drive. Every Saturday from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. through the closure of Middle Drive West from Transverse Drive to Metzen Road. 365 days per year at the closed bicycle training area that is enclosed by bollards in the center of Middle Drive West. And 365 days per year on several miles of designated paved trails that extend from the tip of the Panhandle all the way through Golden Gate Park, as well as the bicycle racing track that encircles Polo Field. In supporting a further street closure as an expansion of this recreation opportunity in Golden Gate Park sites just mentioned, the department strongly advocates that any expansion of street closure be located in either the middle section or western section of Golden Gate Park. The eastern end of Golden Gate Park is already heavily utilized because of the many fine attractions that are located there: the Conservatory of Flowers, the recently reopened Young Museum, the Botanical Garden, the Japanese Tea Garden. We would like to see increased public utilization of the beautiful parklands that make up the middle and western end of this extraordinary park as well. In so doing, we could create an even wider range of outdoor recreation options. Specifically, a Saturday street closure in the western end of the park would offer a more pastoral or woodland experience as contrasted with the current Sunday street closure, which is more wide open and populated by large facilities. We ask for consideration of the middle and western end of Golden Gate Park as a site for a proposed 6-month trial of this very worthwhile recreation activity.
Mr. Kern, how did your department come about to make this decision for you to present this today?
I'm sorry, sir.
What was the decision-making process to take this position, which brings you here today to present this statement from your department?
So it's just a recommendation on our part. We're simply discussing this among the Golden Gate Park staff looking at the park, what the utilization rates are, what kinds of activity levels do we have in the various sections of the park, and we've been looking for some time to increase participation in other sections of the park that could certainly benefit from a wider participation by the public.
Okay, so this is staff recommendation. Have you presented this recommendation in writing?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay, if you could put it in the file for us.
Sir?
If you could send it, if you could put it in writing and put it in the file for us, please.
Yes, sir.
Because this would be then more official for us to consider that. And then have you also considered any amenity-related issues around what you've just recommended here?
I'm sorry, sir. Say
Have you? I know the sound in here is terrible. Have you also considered any amenity-related aspects of the recommendation which you have just put forth here on behalf of the staff of Recon Park?
Yes, if there were another site considered, be it in the middle section or the western end, depending on what that site was, we could take a look at availability of restrooms, survey what other types of amenities would be desired, so that we could see what we would have to undertake to do that.
And how far along has the staff fleshed out this recommendation over the last 4 or 5 years? Are you aware of any of that?
No, sir.
You haven't been there 4 or 5 years?
No, sir. I've only been here for 8 months.
I know. That's it. Sure. Okay. So thank you. So that you're aware of, there is no furtherance of any details around this recommendation that's been developed over time. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kern. Appreciate you very much. Robert McAdams. Thank you, sir.
This one? Done, thank you. Thank you very much. I can definitely see this from both sides. I'm in a wheelchair and have been for 6 years, 3 months, 14 days. I'm also a professional skater. For the 6 month involved, I can't see any reason not to close its traffic and see what happens. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Carolyn Blair. Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to follow an order. The order in which they came in seems to be the fairest. Unless we get too many people from one side or the other, we'll try to make sure to get both sides. And I will call a few more names. Again, and if you would line up to your right over by that wall. Sheila Presley, Eukendra Harris, and sorry, Mr. Buchanan has already spoken. Connie Goodyear Barron. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Carolyn Blair with the San Francisco Tree Council. I'm also a member of the Bicycle Coalition and past chair of Transit First Market Street. I'm here to speak on behalf of a Healthy Saturday closure. Healthy Saturday is about health, and over 1/2 of our American youth from 12 to 21 are not vigorously active on a regular basis. The average youth walks less than 8 minutes per day. 1/3 of our San Francisco children cannot pass a minimal treadmill fitness test. Children living in neighborhoods where parents don't feel it's safe for them to play are 18% more likely to be obese. Because of this, 1/3 of our children are at risk of developing type 2 diabetes for the rest of their life. The Surgeon General recommends communities create opportunities for physical activities that are enjoyable, that promote adolescent and youth adult confidence in their ability to be physically active and involved with friends, peers, and their parents. This is what Healthy Saturday is about, and our parks are for healthy recreation. My maid and I went to Golden Gate yesterday just to try and have a quiet lunch and walk somewhere where there weren't cars. This is our park dissected with roads. And, according to the statistics about hardscape versus open space, we have very little of it. And so, again, I am here to ask for balance. We have 7 days out of the week that cars can come and go anywhere. We don't have very few days where people can be away from cars. So please please have closure for Saturday, and at least make 2 days out of the week where people can really recreate safely, quietly, enjoyable, away from cars and pollution. And by the way, I am a car owner as well.
My name is Blair. Stuart Stone. Again, if you want to speak, you don't have to, but it's preferable, I think, you fill out a card. Thank you. Sir?
Thank you. I'm Stuart Stone. I live at 726 10th Avenue at Fulton Street, right outside the entrance to the parking garage. I am opposed to the Saturday closure. I have two things I'd like to discuss with you. One is the parking issue. We've had some people comment already that the parking garage has enough spaces to satisfy parking needs. And the statistics that you heard earlier were that the garage is anywhere from 55% to 85% full, depending on events and days of the week. And the suggestion is going to be, or was and will be again, that that's plenty of extra room for people who need parking. But we only have one facility open at this time, the DeYoung. And when the Academy of Sciences is open, if those statistics, if that trend carries out, that garage is going to be full most of the time, and you will not have that parking available. So when you eliminate parking for people in the vicinity of those facilities, you're going to be forcing them out into the neighborhoods. The second point that I want to address is your representative capacity, representing the citizens of San Francisco. As representatives, sometimes it's difficult to tell what your how your constituents feel about an issue, and sometimes you'll hold hearings like this one in order to determine that. But in this case, your constituents have already been polled on this issue twice. There have been votes held about whether there should be a Saturday closure, and both times the idea of a Saturday closure has been defeated at the polls. So you know what your constituents think about this. You know what the results would be if it were a direct Democratic vote on the issue. And the question I have is, what could possibly lead you to take action that is contrary to the vote of the constituents? If the answer to that is a persistent elitist group coming at you time and again, that's not a very good answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sheila Presley? Sheila Presley. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am the Director of Education at the Fine Arts Museums, and I just wanted this body to be aware of the fact that on Saturdays we offer 4 classes, free classes for children and families at the museum. There's no fee for these classes, and for many of the people who come to these classes, having to pay for parking in the garage would be a hindrance. We work very closely with San Francisco Unified. It's very important to us that the children of San Francisco grow up connected to these collections. So I would just like people to please consider low-income families to which a parking fee is a deterrent to come to the museum. We also have over 800 museum volunteers and 300 docents, many of whom are elderly, and it is difficult for them to get to the museum when they have to park a certain distance away. And personally, as a San Francisco taxpayer, I'm concerned about the extra police overtime in terms of manning these road closures, and I'm wondering how that expense is going to be borne, something I'm concerned about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And as we proceed forward, I will pause from time to time. No, thank you very much, Mr. Shirley. Pause from time to time, and certainly rather than wait till the end, and address something. The speaker just before Ms. Presley indicated that the voters had voted twice. Actually, the voters voted at one election on 2 different issues, once on 2 different propositions. So just people aren't confused as if it was 1 year and then another year, a different election. They were at the same ballot. And in fact, the key issue that the people voted on was to suspend the possibility of Saturday closure until certain issues were addressed. And the key issue here was the development of the concourse, what has gotten developed around the concourse authority with a traffic plan and with a parking situation with an underground parking lot. That is the reason I think that this is not the same situation as it was. That was November 2000 when there was one election with 2 propositions. So it was not voted on twice on different elections. And I just want to make sure that's clear and people can address that however they want. But that's certainly something I think that from time to time, if we get something that kind of mischaracterizes, I will say my bit I guess that's why I'm sitting here for a little while. Ukendra Harris. Ukendra Harris, thank you.
Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Ukendra, and I'd first like to thank you for this opportunity to speak and give a voice to families, because I speak as a member of a family who grew up with 3 young children, and I know how much more convenient it is to be able to drive in to the park. And I also speak as one of the art educators at the De Young Museum. I work with the free Saturday programs Sheila talked about, and one of the most questions we get is, where can I keep my stroller? Am I allowed to keep my stroller in this room? So that shows that a lot of families are coming in with young children, strollers, jackets. They have a lot of things to carry, and we just want to keep the park as accessible as possible to families who are coming into these free programs, so that they're able to keep strollers in the cars, not have to lug it on the bus, not have to lug all these things. So I'd like you to consider that when you're thinking of closing the roads, that these programs are free and we attract a lot of families with strollers. We're also trying to attract outreach to as many people as possible. We have a free Spanish program 1 time a month, so it's just more and more people coming in, and we want to keep it as accessible to as many people as possible. Families who want to expose their children to the park, to artwork, and we don't want to hinder anyone with parking fees, as we've heard before, just making things more difficult, having to leave your car at home. So thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I ask the people in the back, if I say 1, 2, 3, do you hear this a little bit better than before? No? Okay. Okay. Next speaker, please. I've got Connie Goodyear Barron, then Nancy Connor, then Nancy Erickson, then Michelle Stratton. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Connie Goodyear Barron, a board member of the San Francisco Parks Trust, and I will be speaking in support of the San Francisco Conservatory of Flowers. As you may remember, the conservatory was listed as one of the 100 historically significant treasures by Save America's Treasures, and was restored at a cost of approximately $20 million. It is open to worldwide acclaim and is beloved by the people of San Francisco. Already we know that the attendance at the Conservatory of Flowers drops by 37% on Sunday compared to Saturday. This has a major impact on the revenue stream and eventually results in the decline of the organization. Many of the people who contributed to the Conservatory of Flowers also contribute to the museums and the many institutions that give this city its diverse cultural life in the park. They care about their city and want to visit all these institutions and have them remain accessible. If you decide to close the park, and particularly Kennedy Drive in front of the conservatory, you will be discriminating against not only children, families, the disabled, the elderly, and tourists, but perhaps those people most important to you, your constituents. You, as public stewards and officials of these fine institutions that enrich our city and celebrate our diversity, must recognize the importance and the impact of this closure. Before you make that decision that will negatively impact this city and have long-lasting ramifications, please take time to fully analyze the impact park closure will have, particularly on the Conservatory of Flowers and its location. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barron. Nancy Connor.
Good afternoon. I'm Nancy Connor, president of the San Francisco Parks Trust, and I feel that this is a regrettable situation that we are in. Everyone in this room is for the healthy use of parks, the greater health for every citizen in this community, and I think everybody here is a believer in the importance of parks. We support the creation of a car-free paved recreation area in the park. The only question is where. We would really like to work with you to find a spot where the consequences were not so dire. For the Parks Trust, the primary consequence is the Conservatory of Flowers. It is really left high and dry, with a documented 37% decrease in attendance on closure days. A lower attendance means fewer exhibits and programs, which leads to even lower attendance, and you have that downward spiral, which perhaps gets us right back to where we started before we raised $22 million for its renovation. While there may be mitigations to help the Conservatory of Flowers, none of these are included in the plans. Many of them come with big price tags, and I've never heard any money put forward to accomplish them. The Parks Trust, in just 10 days, collected 654 signers of attendees at the conservatory who said that indeed this closure would be would create complications for access. Thank you. If this closure plan is to remain on JFK, and if this is an honest trial, then there must be fair and measurable standards that it is based on, and these standards must address issues of use, access, and parking, and not just the levels of service of traffic at certain intersections. The Parks Trust is all for park access and wants to make sure that we're encouraging park use. But there are many who believe that road closure actually results in a lower usage of the park. Unfortunately, there are no baseline numbers for other park attractions. But there are 680 free parking spaces that are lost by closure, and this is in addition to the approximate 750 free spaces already lost. So I hope you will consider moving this to another location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Nancy Erickson. And then Nancy Erickson. Okay, thank you.
I didn't come prepared to speak, but I feel that there's one more thing that might be added. When we were there.
Yeah, the microphones are terrible in here.
When we were first considering building the DeYoung Museum, we also thought whether or not it might be wise to move outside of the park. We were concerned that someday Saturday closures would be reconsidered as they are now. I would like to add that one of the things in building the new DeYoung was the thought for greater and better exhibits in a seismically safe building for everybody. Our Sunday attendance is far, far less than most museums in urban areas. And with the advent of the new DeYoung, new exhibits, the Monet coming up soon, it will be indeed quite interesting to see how many more people do attend. But if the park in that specific area is closed on Saturday as well as Sunday, it could in fact be a hindrance to future exhibits and loans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michelle Stratton. Then after this, Norman Rolfe, Paul Dorn, Sue Vaughan, and Ann Ziolkowski. Okay, thank you. Michelle.
My name is Michelle Stratton. I am co-chair of the North Park Neighbors Association, composed of residents living north of Golden Gate Park. I've been personally active in many Golden Gate Park issues, including the Citizens Advisory Committee and a Transportation Coordinating Committee for Golden Gate Park. But I'm speaking on behalf of North Park Neighbors, which objects to this ordinance for many reasons. First, there really has been no public participation in this matter, except for this hearing on Good Friday, which many people I know could not attend. Second, there is no need to study Saturday closure. The stretch of JFK Drive is already closed on Sunday, and we know what those impacts are. Reduced attendance at the museums and the Conservatory of Flowers. We also know there will be impossible congestion on other park roads and on neighboring streets, just as there already is on Sunday, only worse. Third, we object because this proposal benefits those people who have numerous other choices for spending their Saturday leisure time. They can walk car-free right now in the nearby botanical gardens. They can walk or ride on closed streets further west in Golden Gate Park, or they can go to the Presidio and use the wonderful bike lanes and walkways at Crissy Field. At the same time, those impacted by this proposal have no choice but to bear the adverse effects of Saturday closure, as they already do on Sunday. The conservatory can't move closer to its patrons. The neighboring residents can't create more street parking for their weekend visitors. This is unhealthy Saturdays for nearby residents. Fourth, there are many other roads in Golden Gate Park much more suited to closure. We support making other streets car-free in areas that have much more recreation potential, where people can picnic and enjoy the park's beauty. Closure could bring real life to other areas by making it special on Saturdays. And lastly, despite what the proponents said, the general public will not benefit from this ordinance. It is elitist and favors those who have free Saturdays and money to pay for parking. Please do not pass this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Next speaker, Mr. Rolfe, Norman Rolfe. After that, Paul Dorn.
For the record, I am Norman Rolfe, and I do support this this closure here and so forth. I mean, I always thought this garage was supposed to solve all the parking problems and everything. That allegedly was the purpose of it. Now we're telling something else. As for the people in the neighborhood who are afraid of the impacts, well, what you need is residential permit parking 7 days a week. Actually, if you look over the history of Golden Gate Park, this is a very modest proposal. I have been told that John McLaren wanted to borrow automobiles from the park, period, all of them, all the park, all the time. And I believe that is the case in Central Park in New York, that automobiles are barred, and there are a couple of museums and planetarium in that park. One of the things that the people promoting opposing this, and the people promoting the garage and so forth, fail to, they keep denigrating public transportation. They keep talking about the people with strollers, babies, packages. That tells me they don't ride the Muni very much, because if they rode the Muni a lot, they would see people getting on with strollers. They'd see people getting on with small children. They see people getting on with all kinds of things. So I think what they would do is publicize how to get to this place by public transportation, how to get there. And if they spent as much time and effort promoting public transportation and improving public transportation, they would have public transportation. It would meet their meticulous standards, and parking requirements, parking demand would go down. So I think that's the way they should be going, and I will close by saying I do indeed support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Paul Orn.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this hearing. My name is Paul Dorn. I'm a San Francisco resident, and I'm presently the Director of Marketing and Communications for a nonprofit arts organization. And I've been involved in arts marketing for more than 15 years. Until recently, I was the marketing manager at Mondavi Center at UC Davis. This is a new $60 million performing arts facility on the campus of UC Davis. Presents 120 evenings of performance every year. There's no free parking there. You know, I as an arts marketing professional, and excuse me, and this is in Davis too, by the way, where there's less transit than there is in the city, and then less population density in the city. And this is a facility that serves the greater Sacramento region, and there's no free parking there. So as a marketing professional, I'm curious why a business plan is so dependent on free parking. You know, so I'm curious about the DeYoung measure with that. Now, they say that their Sunday attendance is lower than their Saturday attendance. Now, for the 4 decades the Sunday closure has been in effect, the response would be, what has been your proactive measures to market and to address that shortfall? What have you done? I mean, many institutions around the country have variations in their weekend attendance. And then finally, as a marketing professional, it's really been disappointing for the 4 decades nearly that Sunday and holiday closure has been in effect. that the Recreation and Parks Department knows very little about who uses this great urban amenity, how far they come, how they get there, what neighborhoods they get from, how much they spend at local retail establishments. Knows nothing about it. This is the most successful program the Recreation and Parks Department offers by far. By some estimates, as many as 2 million people come to Sunday and holiday closure in Golden Gate Park, and they know nothing about it. And they just, they treat it more or less as a nuisance to the young patrons. And it's really disappointing to hear today, the operations director of the Rec and Park Department suggests that, well, let's shove that out. The reason it's so successful is it is in the section of the park that is closest to most San Francisco neighborhoods, Chinatown, North Beach, Mission, Bayview, Hunters Point, Visitation Valley. And they're saying, let's shove this out there into a less desirable section of the park, and that's unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn. Next speaker, Sue Vaughan.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Sue Vaughan, and I'm a member of the San Francisco Green Party. I'm here to speak on behalf of Healthy Saturdays, but first I want to thank Supervisor McGoldrick for sponsoring this legislation and to add that I am one of your constituents and I support this. I live in your district and I support this piece of legislation. I ride my bicycle down JFK Boulevard almost every Sunday, sometimes on my way to the De Young. I am a member of the De Young, and I'm looking forward to doing this on Saturdays also. The San Francisco Green Party has always supported efforts to close JFK Drive to vehicle traffic, and we advocate in our transportation plank for the creation of more car-free spaces in the city. Ms. Wilsey and other opponents of this measure must know that it is imperative that we reduce our dependence on personal automobiles. I have here a three-part series of articles from the New Yorker last year on global warming. There are 3 articles over 3 different weeks. We know that we're responsible for global warming. Opponents of Healthy Saturdays can't be unaware of global warming and our own role in it. Also, Ms. Wilsey has adopted the propaganda of the Bush administration in calling our current militarism a war on terror. I don't think that's so. It's a war to establish imperial control over what remains of petroleum. And knowing that, it's crucial that we begin to end our dependence on cars and the petroleum that fuels them. I don't know if you can see this. This is what remains in terms of oil. This is 1859. This is what we've used globally. This is about where we're at right now, and this is where we're going in terms of oil, pumping oil out of the planet and what we have left. That's why we're in Iraq right now. That's why we're talking about going into Iran. It's not, and this is why George Bush doesn't like Hugo Chavez. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, Ann Ziolkowski. Excuse me if I butchered your name, Ziolka. And then after that, Jim Heinrich and Tim Hornbecker, Sheila Gottlieb, and Arthur Evans. And if you'd like to, again, over to the right-hand side, line up over there. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Ann Ziolkowski. I'm the operations manager at the Conservatory of Flowers in Golden Gate Park. I'm very proud to be a part of this historic institution. I'm equally proud of the Conservatory's commitment to equal access for people of all ages and abilities. The guest services staff at the Conservatory of Flowers has fielded literally hundreds of calls in the past 2.5 years regarding lack of access to the Conservatory on Sundays. Our staff has been bombarded with complaints from elderly, families with young children, people with disabilities, and also able-bodied people. These people that do make it into our facility on Sundays sometimes take upwards of an hour to find a place to park. Once they're on site, they're pretty hostile with our guest services staff. This is a constant problem for us. I am convinced, and our numbers show it, that there are thousands of others who have not chosen to visit the Conservatory or Golden Gate Park on Sundays and holidays. How will this data be gathered during the trial closure proposed for Saturdays? On Sundays and holidays, there's absolutely no accommodation for dropping off elderly families with young children or people with disabilities who wish to visit the Conservatory. Almost 2 years ago, I hired 2 clients from the Arc of San Francisco, Herman Moore and Spencer DeBella. And Spencer's sitting right here in the front row. I heard Mayor Newsom launch the 100 Jobs in 100 Days campaign. This successful campaign was an outreach to local businesses to encourage them to hire people with disabilities. Out of a staff of 8 guest services, Spencer and Herman are 2 of our 8. Every day I'm inspired by Herman and Spencer's dedication to their job and their ability to get from JFK up our street. And for Spencer, it takes close to 20 minutes walking. Every Sunday and every holiday, there are barriers at the street entrances surrounding the Conservatory of Flowers. What message does this send to our community? This isn't about a garage, and it isn't about money. It's about people. I feel there's a simple solution. Change the direction and move the area to the west.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question? I'm curious to your point of view. The conservatory is a block from Fulton, right? And so you're saying that if people can't park right out in front there, that they won't come to the conservatory?
When they come up through Fulton, if they cannot find parking on Fulton, which is very difficult, I'm in the park every Saturday and Sunday, you drive around. I'm lucky, I do park over at the lodge, and it takes me about 8 minutes walking to get from there. It's not a problem for me to get into the conservatory. Also, there's a steep, very significantly steep hill on our Goello directly behind the building. So elderly and people with disabilities, it's challenging. They cannot make it. And the next closest is 8th and Fulton, which is about a third of a mile.
I mean, I can understand someone from the DeYoung saying that you might not want to walk all the way from Fulton or Lincoln to the DeYoung, but from a block away, it's kind of hard to understand that, or even to feel that you're being very compelling.
Well, it's actually more than a block away if you're coming down through Arguella, and that's also assuming you find parking on Fulton. It's a busy neighborhood. The area is busy even during the week without the street closure. I mean, it's a difficult place to park. Also for somebody like Spencer, who does take public transportation, he relies on taxis to get into our facility. There's times that he's been turned away at the barricades because the taxi drivers.
What percentage of the people who come to the conservatory are physically challenged?
I would say probably about 10 to 15%, and we have a lot of groups that visit throughout the week. We offer different comps and reduced rates for people. Group homes come in to visit, people with wheelchairs. I think they choose our site because of the tranquility and also because of the accessibility.
Well, I'm sure that even the people who are in favor of Saturday closure would be open to some kind of arrangement that would allow those who are physically challenged to get access on Sundays, Saturdays, on other times. If you'd like to work on that, it's something that I'd be very happy to help you with.
I'd be interested in that. Thank you.
Ms. Olkowski, are you aware that on Sundays, members of the disability community can gain access to be dropped off right in front of the conservatory right now?
I'm aware of that,
Okay.
Supervisor,
Thank you.
a lot of the tourists
Appreciate it.
and locals are not aware of that.
Right. I mean,
So they don't get out and move. They do not get out and move the barriers.
Sure. I think that's
So-
one of the things that I'm having. Were you here when Ms. Meisner spoke earlier?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Again,
I
I
met
think that's
Susan.
one of the things we want to make sure to work on and make it even better on Sundays, as well as what we're trying to do, and see what happens here on Saturdays.
Right.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much. And in fact, the issue on taxis, we've been discussing that so that we'll be able to make sure that that also is something where there's no impediment to anybody who needs to get in. Okay, Mr. Heinrich, Jim Heinrich, next, then Tim Hornbecker.
My name is Jim Henrich. I'm acting director at the Conservatory of Flowers, and as a staff member of the Recreation and Park Department, I'm offering the following comments simply as a recommendation for consideration. The Sunday street closure and proposed Saturday street closure precludes many visitors, but especially elderly and disabled, from easily reaching the Conservatory of Flowers. The Conservatory is uniquely sited within the footprint of the street closures because it is completely isolated. Conservatory Drive east and west behind the Conservatory, as well as John F. Kennedy from the front, unlike the other cultural institutions. The Sunday street closure was implemented nearly 39 years ago when the Conservatory of Flowers was free to the public, and there was no real issue about access to the building at that time. The Conservatory literally derives limited benefit from the new underground garage at the Music Concourse, which is located 8 blocks away, and a significant benefit was not envisioned from it for the Conservatory. And in response to the recommendations for a couple of the additional disabled parking locations, the one that is on Bowling Green Drive is easily a 4-block distance from the Conservatory, even though it appears as though it's much closer. The one that is located at McLaren Lodge, there are no accessible grade exits from that parking lot. So if somebody were dropped off there in a wheelchair, they would not be able to actually get out of that parking lot. Since the reopening of the Conservatory in September of 2003, there's been a 6-fold increase in attendance, and we are now seeing a drop in as much as 19% in the visitation, just simply from the standpoint of the Sunday closure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heinrich. Tom Hornbecker, then Sheila Gottlieb, then Arthur Evans, then Spencer DeBella, and then Adam Aufdencamp. Thank you.
It's actually Tim Hornbecker and Shelley Gottlieb.
Tim Hornbecker? Yeah, and Shelley Gottlieb. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, there's only one microphone that works. It's the one to your right, sir. Mr. Hornbecker. Yes.
Tim Hornbecker, Executive Director of the ARC of San Francisco, and I have with me documentation from our Board of Directors on a policy that we have voted against the closure of John F. Kennedy Drive because of ADA accessibility issues. And I will have our President address that first, and then I will have a few comments, and I'd like to have Spencer, who works at the Conservatory, who is one of our clients, also share with you.
I'm Shelley Gottlieb, and I'm the president of the Board of Directors of the ARC of San Francisco. And when I got up this morning, it was not my intention to be here today, but I am so motivated and feel that this is an issue that really needs to be addressed. I should also state that I am a cyclist and do enjoy going to the park when there are no cars. However, I do not believe that we need to close the park where the center of the cultural activities of the park reside on both Saturday and Sunday, since by and large, the disabled work from Monday to Friday just as most of the rest of us do, so that their days to recreate and to enjoy the facilities of the park are also on Saturday and Sunday. And since we are closing it Sunday to vehicular traffic, perhaps we should leave that portion of the park open on Saturdays and find another area of the park to close. I believe that closing the park on Saturdays sort of turns back the hands of time on the ADA. The idea was for equal access. Equal access would mean that the disabled have the same access as the able-bodied have to the park on weekends. Lowering fees in the parking lot is not going to give those who don't have cars the access that a cab or paratransit would give them. So although that's a nice thing to do, it's not necessarily going to solve the problem. Just as having to jump through hoops by showing your placard or your handicap certificate is not a way to make it equal access. It's saying, I have to do something extra to get the access to the park. Somehow that doesn't seem to be an equitable solution to me. And what I would suggest then is moving the closed area to either the center or further to the west, where we don't have those buildings that need the access. The ARC of San Francisco is the oldest advocacy organization for people with developmental disabilities in the city, and we're opposed to yet another attempt to close John F. Kennedy Drive. Everyone should have access to these incredible arts treasures and the beauty of Golden Gate Park. The ARC is additionally concerned about people with disabilities who we have helped to get jobs in these places. Will they no longer be able to work on Saturdays because of inaccessibility? Spencer, who will have a moment to speak to you in a minute, faces this issue on a daily basis. Well, we're three of us here. The American with Disabilities Act was written into law to make sure that people with disabilities have equal access to living, learning, recreating, and working in their communities. Closing John F. Kennedy Drive is putting yet another barrier to our neighbors with disabilities. Please, no more blocks to accessibility.
I'd like to have Spencer share with you now, especially.
Sure.
My name is Spencer DeBella. I do work at the Conservatory of Flowers, 300 Kennedy Drive. It would hurt me very much if they close it on Saturday, because if I needed to work, if they needed me to work, I couldn't work because I would have to have a cab, move the gate and everything, so it would be very difficult for me to work on Saturday if needed to be.
Sir, are you aware that, have you ever gone to work on a Sunday?
Huh?
Have you ever gone to work
Yes,
on a
I
Sunday?
have.
And have you been able to go through the gates on a Sunday with a cab?
Yes, but I have to show a little letter from the conservatory, and sometimes the cab drivers will not move the gate for me.
Okay, so we'll work with the cab companies. I pledge to you that we will work with the cab companies. It's part of what we've been discussing offline here before today, to make sure that the cab drivers understand that, and to make sure that the park patrol that would be there would also understand that, and certainly that they would be able to identify your needs instantly, as fast as I just blinked. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, I'm Tim Hornbecker, Executive Director of the ARC, and also a resident of San Francisco. I am been here 3 months. I really enjoy Golden Gate Park, so I appreciate that we do have open space, that we make space available to folks. But I've also been in Washington, D.C., and the state of Washington. I'm very familiar with ADA. I am very concerned. When this went into effect, ADA was obviously not around. And in 1992, finally, our president signed that into legislation. I just want you to make sure that you take those requirements into, when the cab driver won't take him through the barrier, he's got to walk. It already takes him almost 20 minutes to walk from the curb to the front door. So then if he has to walk from that barrier, which is another like 3.5 blocks, consider how long it takes Spencer to get there. So we are very concerned that the ADA is definitely being taken care of, and right now we're opposed. Even a 6-month period, you just don't say, well, we're going to be exempt for 6 months with ADA. We don't agree with that.
Thank you. This might be a good juncture, if the city attorney, if you are at this juncture prepared to present some of the language. A lot of people might not have, and often have not had a chance to read the legislation. There is legislation already in the Sunday closure language, and we're actually seeking today to put forth some clarification language to make it even clearer in as much as addressing federal and state ADA requirements will be absolutely 100% guaranteed. And if the cab drivers can't do it, we will make sure to work with the cab companies. We can't, through this legislation, directly address what the cab driver may or may not do in any situation, but we will, and I guarantee you I will talk to all of them. Do you want to, Mr. Malamud, to present? Because I just want to make sure it's clear to people where we're going. So as some issues come up, we'll clarify them as soon as we can.
John Malamud from the City Attorney's Office.
Thank you.
Through the chair, maybe I can just go through, I'll read the proposed amendments that are before you. They're primarily to address many of the issues you've been hearing. On page 4 of the legislation, of the amended version, we would be deleting the first 2 lines and replacing it with the following. There'd be a new subsection D called disability access, and there'd be 5 subparts to that. The first would read, in addition to the vehicles listed above in subsection A, which are emergency vehicles and the free shuttle, paratransit vehicles and motorists with disability placards may cross from Fulton Street to the Music Concourse and Tea Garden Drive via 8th Avenue. The next point would be all vehicular access points to the areas of closure shall contain directional signage that describes all access points and accessible surface parking areas for people with disabilities and the underground parking facility in the Music Concourse. Third point, 8 accessible parking spaces shall be provided on 8th Avenue between Fulton Street and John F. Kennedy Drive during the closure period. The fourth would be an additional 10 accessible spaces shall be provided on a temporary or permanent basis to assist with access to the road closure areas. The last point would be a signed drop-off zone for people with disabilities shall be located on Bowling Green Drive as close as practicable to the intersection with John F. Kennedy Drive. In addition, under the sections that have the various departments reporting on the outcome and the data collection during the closure period, the Rec and Park Department would also have a specific obligation to study disability access during the closure. We would call that out specifically. And that is on line 18 of your amended version.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Matamud. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next speaker is Arthur Evans, then Spencer DeBella, Adam Aufdencamp, David Miles Jr., and then Greg Garr. So if you'd like to come forth in that order. Thank you. I don't see Mr. Evans coming forward, so the next one is Spencer DeBella. Is Spencer DeBella here? If not, then Adam Aufdencamp. Thank you, sir.
Yes, my name is Adam Aufdencamp, and I'd like to speak in favor of the trial of Car-Free Saturday. I think it's disappointing to me, bitterly disappointing, that the Parks and Recreation Department head was either unwilling or unable to explain the decision-making process. I'm disappointed that the Parks and Recreation came out against this trial period and was unwilling or unable to explain the decision process that led them to taking that position. And as a father of 3 young children, I can wholeheartedly say that the Sunday closure is the very best part of Golden Gate Park for us. Even when we had children in strollers, the number 5 Fulton was much more convenient for us to get to the park to enjoy the outdoors than it was to circle around the blocks in that area or to even try to park inside the park. And I'm a little confused about how this became such an issue about parking when my conception of Golden Gate Park is that it's for recreation and for the enjoyment of the outdoors. So I would urge you to continue on with this trial notion and take back the park from parking.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Hang on. David Miles Jr. and Greg Garr. Then it says David Miles III. Is he related to you?
He's back there somewhere.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is David Miles. I'm president of the California Outdoor Roller Skating Association. I run a lot of different skating activities in and around San Francisco, and I've been out in Golden Gate Park almost every Sunday starting from March of 1979. I led a petition drive that obtained the Monday holiday closures that we have right now, Memorial Day, Labor Day. I was involved in creating that middle drive closure that is closed off right now. I heard someone mention that earlier today. I just wanted to say that thing has been closed for 22 years or so. Not once have they put a restroom there. Not once have they put a water fountain there. Not once did they do anything that would let people be able to go there and enjoy themselves. Because it was never meant to be something where they wanted people to go. It was an answer to a situation, which is one of the reasons why we're here now. The thrust of this whole drive for the Car-Free Saturday is the health issues with youth in San Francisco. 30% of the kids in high school can't pass the physical fitness requirement. That means that they're sitting around playing video games, they're sitting around watching TV, and you can look at the Chronicle now, you can turn on TV now, they're going to be spouting all these bad things that's happening to our kids. Well, if you don't do anything different, if you do the same things you've been doing, I don't see any real answer to the problem. And I'm a person who is out in Golden Gate Park every Sunday. I met my wife in Golden Gate Park. We've been together 27 years now. I've raised all 3 of my kids out there in the park. And that experience is a very positive experience for people. The closure of Saturdays is intended to extend the experience that we have on Sundays. Sundays is the absolute best situation that I've ever seen in San Francisco. I can show up there for free. I can bring my kids. I can have a picnic. I can go and skate up and down the street. I've taught all my kids to skate out there. You can teach your kid to ride a bike. You can enjoy the park for what it was really meant to be for. Now, I love the museum. I love the academy. I love the Conservatory of Flowers. Without those institutions in the park, the experience would not be the same. And I recognize their right to be there and to flourish there. But we have had 39 years to practice this, and none of those numbers are coming into play. We have done this so many times. None of the information that we've gathered over the time seems to be coming into play. We have the same excuses. We have the same reasoning. We have a new day. You have a new garage. You have a new park. It's a new day. This is the 21st century. Let's do 21st century. Take 21st century ideas and implement them for the people of today. That's all the people, not just the museums, not just the academy, not just the skaters, not the bicycles, but everyone. And we should be able to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. Thank you. I messed with it. Okay. Very good. Mr. Garr. Then after Mr. Garr, of course, David Miles III, then Tiffany Miles, Raymond Holland, and Michael Grandin, and then Rick Galbreath. Thank you. Mr. Garr, go ahead.
Can we have the button?
Thank you. Oh, can we have the visual? Okay, there we go.
That's just a comparison. My name's Greg Garr. I'm with the Haight-Ashbury Neighborhood Council. The Haight-Ashbury Neighborhood Council was formed back in 1960 to stop the proposed freeway that was going to go through the Panhandle and Golden Gate Park. We still see that freeway going through Golden Gate Park down JFK Drive 6 days a week. On Sunday, it is the most beautiful experience that we have in our entire park system when JFK is open, not closed, open to recreational use, where everybody can play together, whether it's skating or bicycling or jump rope, without fear of being run over by automobiles. 6 days a week, you don't even want to go down JFK Drive because it's a parking lot. It is dangerous. When I'm riding my bicycle, I avoid JFK Drive 6 days a week and love to use it on Sundays. So I would love to have the Board of Supervisors unanimously endorse this 6-month trial. I don't think you're going to find any problems with this, and we really should start thinking about preserving Golden Gate Park. Golden Gate Park is under siege mainly by the automobile, but also by the very powerful political institutions who continue to control the policies that shape the future of Golden Gate Park, which of course includes the DeYoung, the Academy, the conservatory, striping, all of which I use those facilities, but politically they manipulate what goes on in Golden Gate Park. And it's sad because what loses is Golden Gate Park, and what loses are those of us who enjoy using Golden Gate Park for recreational purposes, not just for a parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. And Mr. Garr, may I take a moment to thank you, Mr. Garr, for all the hard work you do. I often walk on Frederick Street over by Kezar, and I see the important work that you do over there in terms of the planting and the maintaining on your own time, pro bono for free on behalf of the city. So thank you. Mr. Miles.
Yeah. I've been in the park for most of the Sundays of my life, and you see people skating out there, riding bikes, or just playing a game of soccer or whatever, and then you don't have to worry about cars coming through. And I hear people complaining about how if they can't have their cars and they have to lug a stroller or a jacket. Every Sunday my dad goes to the park, and he doesn't park inside the park. He brings a stereo, some speakers, a table. Sometimes he barbecues, so I don't see how that's really a problem. And if you want to go to the museum or whatever, it's like a block away from Fulton or Balboa if you find a parking spot. And then you can walk there for the conservatory, the museums, wherever you want to go. And I think if you send it to Saturdays, all that fun on Sundays, bring it to Saturdays. When I think of a park, I don't think of cars going through it. I think of people having fun, just relaxing and whatever. So that's why I think it should be closed on Saturdays.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miles, and I'm sure you we have one more miles to go before we sleep. So, Tiffany Miles, thank you. You have to go to the other one, Tiffany.
Well, like my brother said, we've been going to the park for most of our lives, and when I'm in the park, I feel very free. It's like when there's no cars there, you don't have to worry about it, and it's like I haven't seen a place like the park where you can go and there's no cars. You can bring your friends and go just about anywhere, and it's a good environment for kids. So, I mean, there's a lot of kids that I know of that they're like selling drugs and stuff, and when they're in the park, it's a better environment for them. And they can go, just about do anything they want. There's the museums and everything, so I think it's very good. And like everyone said, that it can help kids exercise. I think that's very good because a lot of my friends don't really exercise. And sometimes they don't get the chance to go on Sunday. And like myself, I play basketball. I have chances to go on Sunday, but not every day. Every Sunday I can go. So, Saturdays would give me another chance to practice on my skating or ride my bike or whatever I want to do. So that's why I think they should have it closed for cars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Call someone there. Raymond Holland, and then Michael Grandin, Rick Galbreath, and James Bryant. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Raymond Holland. I live at 747 23rd Avenue, and I'm representing the Planning Association for the Richond District, and I'm testifying against the proposed legislation. Part of the main focus of the legislation is the trial period, and that immediately makes me question, well, what are the criteria for measuring success or lack of success once you get through this trial? And if you look at the proposed legislation, it has two criteria. The first is, quote, to expand the possibilities for recreational and other uses of Golden Gate Park during the 6-month period of the road closures, unquote. And then it contains instructions for the Recreation and Park Department to conduct a study of the impact of the Saturday road closures, including particularly recreational and other use of roads closed to vehicle traffic. That's fine. But this presumably study should include what are the characteristics of the people using the roads or not able to use the roads, and also looking at the parts of the park that are adjacent to those roads. Requiring all people to park their cars outside of the park, assuming there is a place to park outside of the park, would certainly affect some persons more than others. For example, accessibility to portions of the park adjacent to the closed roads, fields, and meadows. And there's a big set of fields and meadows across JFK from the museum, just slightly to the west, that is always used for picnics and volleyball games and so forth. But it's quite a far distance from Fulton, assuming you could find a place to park there. Reduces the accessibility of people to those areas. We suggest that you also ought to look not only at the enhanced possibilities of recreation during the trial period, but the reduced possibilities of recreation. You're reducing accessibility for some people, including the disabled, but also families with small children, ones that want to haul in equipment. Second, let me just suggest on the second criteria that the whole issue about providing information for making future decisions about road closures. You asked the Department of Parking and Traffic to conduct a couple studies. But first, the summer of 2006 is going to be the initial summer for both the garage and the DeYoung Museum. Obviously, there are going to be some glitches that will come up that may have to be modified. So it's a trial period for them at the same time. But more importantly, the Academy, which has the largest number of visitors of all four institutions, I'm claiming, doesn't open until 2008. Data gathered during this summer is just going to be irrelevant to what the problems are going to be when the Academy opens. And for that reason, we basically suggest that you defer the trial period. We're in favor of a trial period, but wait until all four institutions are on board and fully operational, and consider some alternatives, like the parts of the Western Park.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Appreciate it. Always appreciate the thoughtful comments of PAR. Absolutely. Michael Grandin, and then Rick Galbraith and James Bryant. Thank you.
My name is Mike Grandin. I'm a resident of Richmond, just north of the park. I live about 2.5 blocks from the entrance to the garage. and I've been involved with the North Park Neighbors Association for the last, 4 or 5 years since their inception in dealing with all the issues with the concourse and parking and so forth. As people have pointed out, if you close the part of the park, you will be forcing people who cannot otherwise access the park by walking, bicycling, muni, or whatever, to park someplace else. We have not taken into account the effect, as somebody has mentioned, of when the Science Museum opens, how the additional traffic that will impose upon the garage, which sounds like it's not going to be able to handle it. I would really like to see, as somebody else suggested, that we defer this proposed test until everything is up and running. And I'd also like to see us consider putting this no driving, no parking space in another location in the park where there's less conflict with the existing institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mr. Grandin. Next speaker is Rick Galbreath.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Rick Galbreath. I am Vice Chair of the San Francisco Sierra Club, representing almost 10,000 members here in San Francisco, and to wholeheartedly support this measure. Our Chair, Howard Strassner, is here. Our Chair of Transportation is here, and he will speak more specifically to the issues that we're supporting. So I want to put on my political science hat and take you back to 2000, when Propositions F and G were on the ballot. They were competing measures. F was a complete closure of JFK. G was a competing companion measure meant to sow kind of confusion in the minds of voters and pretty much kill all the JFK closure propositions at that time. So Prop G back in 2000, it had a trial period. It had mitigations for ADA access. It had a number of things we're discussing here today. So let me read you from the voter information pamphlet mailed to all 450 some odd thousand voters in San Francisco, the Prop G ballot argument. Proposition G is a fair and responsible way to implement Saturday closures. Ensures access to the Young Museum for all San Franciscans, including families with children, seniors, and the disabled. Allows for trial closures to study the impacts of Saturday closures on Golden Gate Park's neighbors, institutions, and park users. Allows for study and mitigation of parking, traffic, transit, and access for all park users. Enacts Saturday closures after the opening of the Music Concourse underground parking facility. Ensures the maximum enjoyment and the minimum inconvenience to all park users. And who is this signed by? Dede Wilsey, President, Board of Trustees of Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco. And with that, I have copies for the committee, I have copies for the press, and, let's just do this. Even the Fine Arts Museum said it was a good idea 6 years ago, and if they weren't lying then they must be lying now, but I don't know which one it is, so you guys will figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Let me call some more names after Mr. Bryant. Ellen Lieber, Ed Pike, M. Kash, Andy Thornley, and Chris Gramley. Again, if you'll line up over to your right, over by that wall. Thank you.
I want to introduce myself. I'm James Bryant. I'm the president of the A. Philip Randolph Institute here in San Francisco, and I'm a member, proud to be, of SEIU Local 790. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a problem, and the problem is called a problem of dissension with the labor community. We ask that you consider in your deliberation the most eloquent way to solve this problem, which is to have folks sit down, get together, and work out a serious solution to the problem. None of the folks in here today are against each other, theoretically. We all really would like to have something worked out. I think that today before you, we should have a proposal not of a possible 6 months trial, but something permanent. As the gentleman said before me, there's always been these trials. And I always say, if you need a trial, then what you don't have is a solution. But let me just make this real clear to you. the labor community is going to be impacted by this. I have many workers, both on the recreation and park side as well as in the museum side, who are going to be impacted, who are going to possibly lose jobs, who are going to possibly have problems with not being able to provide for their families. So I ask that everyone here today consider what is before you all here. Is it the pleasure of the park, or is it the demise of labor families that could lose their possible employment due to the lack or thereof of an agreement that we all can get together? Now, I truly believe that as big as that park is, there are places that we can place a legible, agreeable solution for folks that bring families together, that have it set up so that it would be enjoyable, or as the gentleman earlier said to me about the restrooms as such. I ask that today's vote be delayed, that we not move on this until we've come up with an admirable solution, and we, the labor community, are here to work with you, any of the other communities, as well as with the management of the museum, as well as with the parks. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Ellen Lieber, then Ed Pike.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Lieber, and I'm a member of the Access Advisors of the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. I did a test this past weekend because our Access Advisors were told that people with disabilities were able to park in Golden Gate Park and on JFK Drive, even with the Sunday closure. First of all, I did another thing. I went and I looked in the garage. All of the non-van accessible disabled parking spaces were full. I saw 2 other van accessible parking spaces, and that is where you have a van or with a ramp or a lift, and you exit your vehicle usually with a motorized chair of some sort. One of those spaces was iffy because of the encroachment of the building, the young building on the lower level in that van accessible parking space. So there was only one that was really good. All of the other van accessible parking spaces were full. Then I had gone to the west entrance. There were barriers. There was no guard there. I came to the 8th and Fulton Place. I asked to be let in because I was told that I could park on JFK. I was yelled at by a park ranger and told in screaming language to go over and come around the Concourse Drive. Well, I have been going to the Concourse Authority meetings, and all of the disabled places that we had on the Concourse Drive have disappeared. There were 3 at the curb of the Academy. There were several places in the Academy parking lot as well. There were 3 over by the Young and the Hall of Flowers that could be used by people with cars or vans. There were 4 to 6 disabled parking spaces that could be used by cars or vans behind the band shell. And when all of those parking places were full, we were allowed to park in the bus lot. All of the street parking spaces have disappeared. That's more than 10. And the band shell including the band shell parking spaces. And we are no longer able to park in the bus lot. So all I found were 3 disabled parking spaces, 2 on MLK Drive by the tea garden and one across the street for the Arboretum. So where can I park? I need the concrete pad to unload my van. If I unload into a gopher hole, I am very liable to tip over, and you don't know where the gopher holes are. So I really have a great concern about the fact that there is a lack of access for people with disabilities.
I have the answer. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Can we do something about? Are they doing something about that? Okay. We go back to the other microphone. That seems to be the problem. It's that microphone. I think the description I just heard warrants. There we go. I think the description I just heard warrants some explanation from the concourse, because it sounds like a lot of that happened as a result of the concourse reworking and the development of the garage. And I will certainly ask the concourse authority folks to address that issue. It doesn't sound to me as though that's directly related to what we have before us today, but it's certainly worth making sure that what happened with the building of the new garage and the reconfiguration of the concourse did not deprive the disability community of access as a result of loss of spots, if I understand the testimony which we just heard from Ms. Lieber. So I will be sure to follow up with them on that, because that doesn't bode well. Thank you. Mr. Pike, Ed Pike.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Ed Pike. I'm a resident of San Francisco. I'm a parent. My family is members of the California Academy of Sciences, and one of the things I enjoy doing most is taking my daughter to go for a ride in Golden Gate Park. And I think this is a great opportunity for the city to help families. Families are getting squeezed out of San Francisco. Schools are closing because families are leaving. We've talked a lot about the health benefits of getting kids out, having them get a healthy place to exercise, and I think that's going to be a tremendous benefit. And for my own personal interest, I love riding with my daughter on the back of my bike, and in a few more months, on her birthday, she's going to get her very own bicycle for the very first time. So I'm really looking forward to taking her to a place that's flat, that's car-free, safe place where I can teach her to ride my bike, something I've really enjoyed doing and enjoyed doing with her, that she can now do on her own. And, I think the benefit of the park is really to serve the residents and the visitors to San Francisco. The park is not to provide parking. I do understand and appreciate all the folks who have raised issues about access to people who are physically challenged, and, I will say that that's also very important to me, and I'm glad to hear that that's being addressed, because I think, it's really important to make the park accessible to everyone, have an opportunity for everyone who wants to run or skate, or go enjoy the museums, who can get around on their own, or who needs, special access in order to get to the museums and institutions. So I strongly encourage you to support this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kash, next speaker. Then Mr. Thornley after that. Then Chris Gramley, and then Ted Strawser, and then Gene Brodsky. Thank you. Mr. Kash.
Hi, my name's Kash, and I would have liked to have brought my two lovely daughters here to show them the kind of down and dirty politics I love about this city. But since the divorce, I don't see them as much. And as a matter of fact, the idea that I can give up and just pop over on a Sunday with them to have some safe time in the park and skip Saturdays doesn't really work. Some of us have jobs on the weekend, the people who serve you coffee and valet park your car. And that's the real problem with this is I've heard the term elitist bandied about quite a bit, and unfortunately it's been pointed to me. I've got here an unauthorized leaked document signed by John Buchanan and Diane B. Wilsey, and I would like to read you something from it. It says, road closures severely compromise access to the museum, particularly seniors, families, persons with disabilities, and anyone who cannot afford the cost of the parking garage. Diane, I'd like to ask you, who in your social circle takes the bus? I know I do. I take them with my kids. I see families on the bus all the time. City families, not people too suburbanized to know how to read a bus schedule. They're not talking about the people who work in this city and stayed here good times and bad. I've had 20 years of trying to make this city better for people like me, not people who have their cars valet parked in the shiny new garage. What I would like to see, if it was fair, would be 3 days of closure and all the park. That way my people could use it. By the way, I've lived at the beach. The reason that we want this end of the park and the reason that they want this end of the park is it's the good side. You want to go party at the beach?
Thank you.
Bring your parka. Thanks.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could hold off, by the way, on any other applause. We have probably 2 or 3 hours more of testimony if everybody is here on these cards. So I think if we could move forward a little faster without the applause in between, and I appreciate the enthusiasm on both sides. Thank you. Andy Thornley, again, then Chris Gramley, Ted Strawser, and Gene Brodsky. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisors. I'll talk fast. I'm Andy Thornley, the Program Director with the San Francisco Bike Coalition. I'm also a Richmond resident, and I thank you, Supervisor McGoldrick, for bringing this to the board. You've heard opponents ask, wasn't this defeated at the polls? Haven't the voters spoken? Of course, yes, but there was a bit of crosstalk, and I think we had a little telling of this, but it bears repeating. In the spring of 2000, park-loving citizens decided it was time to bring a car-free JFK Drive forward, and we got enough signatures to get Prop F on the ballot for the November 2000 election. A survey conducted by David Binder organization in March of 2000 showed that 61% of likely voters supported this measure, so it looked like a clear winner. But for some reason, the DeYoung, the Academy, and other groups were threatened by the prospect of this Prop F being enacted, despite having won their 800-car garage directly beneath the concourse. And in desperation, they enlisted Supervisor Michael Yockey to launch a torpedo proposition to confuse voters and weaken support for Prop F. Yockey's Proposition G, as it became known, said, car-free Saturdays are great, we're all for it, but only after the concourse garage is built and open, and only as a trial. Essentially, the healthy JFK legislation that you have before you today. Supporters of Prop F, the original prop, felt that Yockey's Prop G move was a dirty trick, meant to dilute support for car-free Saturdays in the park. Certainly had a lot more money behind it. And indeed, in the end, this was the case. Prop F got 45% of the vote, Prop G, 38. Neither won a majority, although you could reasonably say that the aggregate support was overwhelming. Likewise, San Francisco voters spoke plainly and tossed Michael Yockey out of office. And we suspect that his opportunistic and cynical alliance with the concourse institutions had something to do with this. The voters know a tool when they see one. And Yockey's largely forgotten now, but don't feel bad. He's got a nice job with the downtown law firm. You've heard some of the other supporters of Prop G, and we wonder why. You heard the Fine Arts Museum very much in favor of Saturday closures, 6-month trial after the garage opens. Planning Association for the Richmond, Friends of Rec and Park, now the Parks Trust, the Academy of Science. These are all supporters of Prop F. We wonder when they want to face up to that. We're just asking for fair play, keep your word, and let the people play in the park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris Gramley? Yes, thank you, Mr. Gramley. Thank you, Mr. Thornley, too.
Thank you. My name is Chris Gramley. I'm a general contractor and a local artist in San Francisco. And first I would like to say that I don't think that, I think every effort should be made to continue to provide access for the elderly and disabled to Golden Gate Park. I don't think this legislation involves excluding anyone's access to the park. So I think the efforts that are going forth for that are very important. I'm very much in support of this legislation, this trial period. I'm somewhat appalled by the propaganda that has been put forth by the DeYoung Museum and the mistruths that have been put forth in both their letter and some of the things that have been said today. I heard someone from the conservatory today say that, this would be a betrayal to families and children, and it's beyond me how someone can say that removing automobile traffic from a section of the park on a Saturday afternoon is a betrayal to families and children. I don't understand that. I think that, I heard someone from the DeYoung stand up here and say, yeah, we were worried about that this Saturday closure was going to come back into play, and we considered moving the location outside of the park, when in fact the stance at the time was that once the museum is built and the garage is built, we will in fact support this. And I'd like to know where that support went, what happened to that support, because it's not here today. There are a lot of statistics about Sundays, we have this attendance versus that, and let me just say that nobody knows what the statistics are for Saturdays, because Saturdays, this has never been done, and it's a trial period, and that's why these things happen in such a way as a trial period. Mistakes happen, there are quirks in the system, these things need to get worked out. So Saturday is not Sunday. Let's try it and see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ted Strawser, then Gene Brodsky, and there's some more names. Rachel Kroa, or Kra, I think. Kron, I don't know. Chris Hayashida Knight, and Regina Sneed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ted Strawser. I'm a longtime member of the Bicycle Coalition. I've lived in San Francisco for 13 years, and I've worked to try to help make car-free space on the Saturday for 13 years, and I'll do it for another 13 years if it takes. Supervisor McGoldrick, thank you for your leadership on this issue. The message today is a clear message. Not in my backyard. The city's own solution, move it out to the west end. And I agree with Mr. Aufdencamp. I'd like to know how they got to that conclusion too, because none of the advocates I've talked to had the pleasure of an audience with the director of Rec and Park. I know that's not true about the trustees. For too long, politics in the city and supervisors, no offense, and certainly not yourself, Mr. McGoldrick, considering your leadership here, have done a tally game. 4 people called for parking, 3 for public safety. Parking wins. 5 people called for parking, 3 for public space. Parking wins. The city has values, the city has a vision, and the job of the Board of Supervisors is not to take a tally, it's to do the right thing. The City Hall, 39 years ago, did the right thing, created a car-free space in San Francisco, and the city has been better for it always. It's the biggest attraction in the Golden Gate Park. The DeYoung, the Academy, they're important San Francisco institutions, so is the Golden Gate Park. It is not a driveway to the DeYoung. The fact that Dede and the socialites say that there's no access does not mean there's no access. The job of the supervisors is to determine the facts. And the way to determine the facts, one way is to do a trial. We all agree that disabled access is a requirement to any solution here. It's in the legislation. And I believe, hearing the city, looking at the legislation and hearing all the advocates on both sides, that is a requirement and it is part of the solution, and any other solution is unacceptable. The fact is, Sundays have been successful for 39 years, wildly successful. That was before there was a parking garage in the park. Now there's a garage, front door access to the concourse. Let's do a trial, 6 months, see if it works, make it work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brodsky, Gene Brodsky, then Rachel Kra.
My name is Gene Brodsky, who cannot speak well at this moment.
Okay, thanks.
I am representing myself. I am not a socialite, but I do run and hike in Golden Gate Park. And my position is that I support strongly a Saturday closure, but not on the east side of Kennedy Drive. There are areas that are very suitable as Kennedy Drive East for the closure of an area. One area that I support is the area on the west side of West Kennedy Drive. There has been no community meetings or other discussion or analysis with respect to the use of Kennedy Drive West. All I have heard from in speaking with or listening to members of the Bicycle Coalition is that it is cold in that area. In other words, that 1/2 mile from a crossover drive is a new microclimate. Notwithstanding the frigid area that they discuss, it does not prevent a large number of visitors to attend concerts at Marks Meadows, Speedway Meadows, Lindley Meadows, and the Polo Field. It doesn't prevent large picnics and celebrations at Marks and Lindley Meadows. It does not prevent large numbers of people performing exercises and walking around Spreckles Lake. It does not prevent families watching the bisons at Bison Paddock. It does not prevent families from feeding ducks, picnicking, and bird watching at the chain of lakes. And it doesn't prevent bicyclists and walkers using Middle West Drive. There is no reason why the western part should not be used. And as a resident of the Richmond District and the Outer Richmond District, I think it would be very safe for people to use that area, which has now automobiles traveling at 40 or 50 miles per hour west of the crossover drive. So I think it would be a safety factor to have that on Saturday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brodsky. Thank you. Rachel, and you'll correct my reading of your name.
It's actually Rachel Kraai, but thank you for your
How do you spell it? K-R?
A-A-I.
A-A-I. Okay, thank you.
It's a lot of vowels in a row.
Okay.
My name is Rachel Kraai. I'm a resident of the city, a sustainable transit advocate, and also a former teacher. I have a few points to make, many of which have already been made, but I do love Sundays in the park. As you've seen, the transformation is incredible. It's magical. Families and children and adults of all ages, safe and comfortable walking, skating, and riding their bikes. As a former teacher and an educator all over the Bay Area, what I see is a safe and comfortable place for children to play. As a teacher, again, I know how developmentally important this is for children to have a safe place to be, to play, to learn how to ride a bike, to learn how to roller skate. And as a resident of the city and a resident of the Mission, I also know how lacking these spaces are in the city. The closure of JFK on Saturdays would also be a symbolic and show a symbolic and also a physical dedication to encouraging adults and youth to use the streets for physical exercise. We're in the middle of an obesity epidemic right now, as is widely publicized. And we need to show both youth and adults that they can use the streets to exercise their bodies and have fun while they're doing it. That said, I heartily endorse the Healthy JFK Saturdays proposal.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kraai. Chris Knight, then after Mr. Knight, Regina Sneed, then after Ms. Sneed, Jean Lee, Robert Wergaft, Lorena Wergaft, and Charlie Doris. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Chris Hayashida Knight. I've lived in San Francisco for 3 years, and I'd like to be able to come up and give some kind of really convincing argument about the issue, but all I can really do is speak from the point of view of a young parent, and I had hoped that my wife and baby could be here today, but they're sick today. We have really enjoyed Sundays in the park over the last couple of years. Sometimes we drive there, we are members of City Car Share and use that method of access to get there. Other times we take the bus or I'll bicycle. And it really hasn't been an issue for us to get right up next to the door of the place we want to go, because we also enjoy visiting the museums and enjoyed the Conservatory of Flowers a few weeks ago as well. So I've been a little disappointed that there's been a breakdown here of either people who use the museums or people who use the park for recreation, because the park is a place where you should be able to do both and do it easily. I would echo the sentiments expressed earlier that this isn't worth doing at all if it really does cause damage to access for disabled people or the elderly. But those seem like things to me that can be mitigated pretty easily. The larger issue to me is should the park be used for cars or for people? And I realize that's not a fair distinction either, that some people do need cars, but as a resident of the city who doesn't own a car, most of my time is spent around people and with people who don't own cars or use cars, and somehow we manage to live in the city and make a living and get around. And I'm disappointed that that people have made that argument that you have to have a car to get around. Having a car is a choice, and taking your car to the park is a choice for most people. For those people for whom it is a choice, I would encourage them to park nearby and walk the extra 50 yards. It's good for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jean Lee, Robert Wergaft. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGoldrick, for the opportunity. I believe that a couple striking things have been said here. One is some of the people using the term elitist to describe mothers with strollers, people on skates, people on bicycles, people walking their dogs, people that walk to the park to use it, people that don't have cars to go park in free or expensive spaces, people that just want to walk from their neighborhood to the park to enjoy a place where they can have fun without cars running them over. Another thing that's interesting is that I think some people here seem to have the attitude that the park is simply the grounds for some museum or the Conservatory of Flowers. It's not. The park is a beautiful, throbbing organism that has many features. Some of them are these fine museums. And I think it's wrong to try and set people against each other. The whole idea of this proposal is to find a way to integrate these uses into the park in such a way that they all flow together. The people from the museum talked about how wildly successful the museum is and how there are more people than they expected showing up at the museum. This is good news. And the people that are in favor of the Saturday closure talk about how wildly successful the Sunday closure is. That's good news. Both these things can work together because the people that are in favor of this proposition have done their homework and have worked on the disability issues, they've worked on the access issues, and that's why this is a win-win for everybody. I really think it's important for people to try this out and understand that carless forms of recreation are so rare in an inner city environment. Where else can you go in the city where you can have that kind of fun in such a beautiful place? And I challenge any of the people who are against it to go there Sunday and see how much fun it is. And it's a rare thing. It's something we should all appreciate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brett. Then Lorena Wergaft, again, then Charlie Doris, Wayne Veach, Ann Lancerati, Jerry Steiner, and then Richard Lancerati. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lorena Cuevas, and I'm here today to support the closure. And as a real estate broker in San Mateo County, I hear families' concerns about not having enough safe places for their families and their kids to enjoy a day off. And what I would just like to propose is that by having an extra day off on a Saturday without the traffic, that families would really appreciate knowing that they can take the time on that day, if they can't do it on a Sunday, to really enjoy that time off without the traffic. So I'm here to speak for all the kids and families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wergaft. Appreciate it. Charlie Doris, again, then Wayne Veach.
My name is Charlie Doris. I'm one of the access advisors at the Fine Arts Museum. I'm speaking against the proposal. Earlier, one of our other access advisors, Ellen Lieber, said that she had been yelled at by the park ranger when she tried to get onto JFK at the 8th and Fulton gate. This morning, I called Rec and Park 2 times, spoke to 2 different people. Both said that no cars were allowed on JFK on Sundays. And then I asked, well, what about if they have a disability placard? There was a pause, and the person said, well, I really can't tell you anything more than I already know. There's a real disconnect about what is supposed to happen on Sundays and what really happens. That confusion is going to be duplicated on Saturdays. And I know that it's nice to say that, well, all of these people will be well-trained, manning the checkpoints and giving out information, and they will know that people with disability placards, and also some people don't have disability placards, they have stickers on their license plates, and they'll need to know that. But all of this they'll know. The idea that you can put a complicating factor like this against people who have mobility problems, and they're going to have the same degree of access to the de Young that they have today, that's just not going to happen. That's not the real world. If you complicate matters for these people, you're making their life harder, and that's what's going to happen. The other thing is, please don't think that that all disability parking places are created equal. They're not. Once you get them very far away, if they have a certain elevation to them, you're creating problems. So this issue should be deferred. There are lots of solutions that have been proposed. This trial period is just not a good idea, and the idea of closing JFK on Saturdays is not going to be good for people who have mobility problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doris. And Mr. Kern, who's here with Recon Park, you don't need to get up necessarily unless you want to, but I certainly know that you've been taking note of all this, and I assume you will convey these concerns to Mr. Yomi Agunbayati, the General Manager of Park and Rec, in terms of the implementation of what is already existing policy and the facilitating of access, as people have raised some concerns here. If you would take
Yes, sir. I've noted those. I am taking them back.
I appreciate it, Mr. Kern. Thank you. The public certainly appreciates it. Thank you. Wayne Veach, yes. And then afterwards, again, Ann Lancerati, Jerry Steiner, Richard Lancerati, Leah Shahum, John Green. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My name is Wayne Veach. I've lived in San Francisco for more than 30 years. I live on Bernal Heights. I've raised 2 kids in the city. We go to Golden Gate Park quite often. I'm a cyclist, I'm a motorist, and I'm also a member of the de Young. I'm very much in favor of this measure for all the good reasons that have been given. Today, Sunday closure, I really prefer the characterization of opening the park. I really like that. The Sunday opening of the park to people is terrific. It's beautiful. And the Saturday opening will also be beautiful. We did build a garage to take care of the de Young's concerns about parking. We did have an entrance to the garage from outside the park so the cars don't have to queue up on JFK to drive into the garage. So that's all been taken care of. I'm sure that the issues that have been raised about folks with disabilities, with handicaps, will be taken care of. It seems to me that those who are opposed to this measure should go with it, and if they've got a problem with parking, they should argue for reduced parking rates on the weekend or even free parking on the weekend. They shouldn't be arguing to delay or obstruct this proposal and thereby deprive not only the citizens of San Francisco but visitors to San Francisco of a delightful Saturday in the park.
Thank you very much. Again, that was Wayne Veach, Lancerati, Ann Lancerati. No, Jerry Steiner, again, Richard Lancerati, Leah Shahum. Leah Shahum. Oh, that's Lancerati. Are you here, Ms. Lancerati? Or?
I think you might have called my name earlier, but, you know, it's very muffled at the back, and I'm not sure. My name is Chui Eng Grosso. I am on the board of directors of the Sunset Heights Association of Responsible People. We did have a meeting on this issue. We had speakers on both sides, and we voted to oppose this Saturday closure. I love the Sunday closure myself.
By the way, I did not call your name earlier, but you go right ahead. Your name comes up about 20 more cards down.
Thank you.
As long as you're up there, go ahead. The acoustic problem certainly is to your advantage today. Thank you. Go ahead.
I love the Sunday closure myself. I take advantage of of it every time I can. But the thing is, it would be very naive to think that only the neighbors who can walk to the park use it. The fact is, other people from other parts of the city use it as well, And it would be also very naive to think that they put their bikes on Muni and come to the park that way. It would be naive to think that they take their tricycles and their 3 kids on Muni and go to the park. The reality of it is there is more, and I would say there's more parking in my neighborhood south of the park on Sundays. We have had to make changes in our normal routine to accommodate this. I do not go shopping on Sundays because I can never be sure that when I come home with my carload of fresh produce and frozen ice cream that I can get back into my garage. If you have Saturday closure, then when do I run my errands? A lot of people have commented that the DeYoung voted for, or actually proposed, Prop G. The thing is, Prop G failed miserably, and I appreciate and I respect the trustees of the DeYoung and the Academy for not going against the wishes of the voters. The question is, why are you ignoring the wishes of the voters? Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Jerry Stein, again, Leah Shahum, and John Green, Randolph Scott, Denise Dan, Leonard Kingsley, and Dr. John Spallone. Thank you. If you would line up over to your right against that wall. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Leah Shahum. I'm the Executive Director of the San Francisco Bike Coalition. Thank you for your time today on this long hearing. Thank you, Supervisor McGoldrick, for your leadership on this long issue. I want to remind us kind of why we're here. This is a photo from a recent Saturday in Golden Gate Park. This is JFK Drive, just a regular day, nothing special happening there. That's just traffic through the park. The very next day, Golden Gate Park, the exact same location. This is what we're talking about, and I'm so happy to be here talking about this, and I'm so happy to see the number of people here, thank you, who've taken their time out to come and work for more space for kids, for families, for safe, healthy recreation. We need more of this in the city. We need more of this in our nation. We all need more of this in our lives, and that's what we're here doing. I want to emphasize that no one's saying people can't drive to come do this, the fun activity on the Sundays, the picture you just saw. Some folks are going to take the bus there, some are going to walk, some are going to bike, and a lot are going to drive. And that's okay, because once they get here, they're going to come out and enjoy this. There's a lot of room for them in that garage. There's a lot of room all over the park. And I want to focus on a couple things. I want to say how pleased the Bike Coalition is to be working closely with the Mayor's Office of Disability on the issues of access, because that is very important. We obviously anticipated that and helped the supervisor look at all of that before this went forward. So I want to show a couple things here, if I could, on the slides. What we're talking about is only the area in red. That's 15% of the park, or 1.5 miles. To close up, here's what it looks like. This green area, the green marking, is the only area that's closed to cars but open to people. Real quickly, I want to emphasize, for folks who are concerned about access to the DeYoung, and that's for both abled and disabled folks, this new garage of 800 spaces is accessible via underground garage or underground roads from one side and surface roads from the other. The front door of the DeYoung is accessible fully 7 days a week. I'm going to keep going because he's not looking. 7 days a week, accessible to the front door right here. So no one's talking about any sort of closing down of access. I also want to focus on the conservatory because a lot of folks have mentioned that. And there are some great proposals in working with the Mayor's Office of Disability to add parking, and I'd like to really focus so that folks who are concerned about disability can see this. 2 or 3 new spaces here, drop-off access right at Kennedy Drive, 50 new spaces here, all close to the conservatory flowers, about 8 new spaces here, 2 or 3 new spaces over here, and another 4 or 6, they believe, spaces right here in the concourse. These would all be new. It's a total of about 18 new disabled parking spaces, all in these areas close to the institutions. So I think it's important that we're all working on that together, and it's in this legislation. I want to share one thing real quickly that you all don't have yet, because I understand the DeYoung has not shared their attendance figures. After weeks of requests, they've not shared them. Well, someone's gotten a hold of them today.
Right.
10 out of 22 weekends since the DeYoung reopened, there's been 22 weekends. 10 out of 22 weekends.
I think this is important to get this, so if you would just finish it up on this.
Sure, I'm not sure if you've seen this. So 10 out of...
These are the statistics on the attendance figure?
DeYoung attendance from the DeYoung just delivered today at 12:22 p.m. after weeks of requests. I believe a newspaper required a Freedom of Information Act to get these because they weren't giving them up. 10 out of 22 weekends. Sunday attendance is higher at the DeYoung than Saturday. Since they reopened in September, 10 out of 22 weekends, Sunday is higher than Saturday. That's with the Sunday car closure. And I just want to highlight a few weekends. One weekend in November. Mid-November, it's about 300 higher. Late December, these are during the holidays, 5,000 people more on Sunday. 5,000. 11,000 people came on Sunday, 6,000 came on Saturday, the weekend after Christmas. At a weekend in mid-February, 3,000 person difference. On a Sunday, February 19th, 9,400 people attended the DeYoung. The day before, February 18th, 6,900 people attended, a 3,000 person difference. You see it time and time again. Half the weekends since they've reopened, the attendance has been higher on Sunday. God bless them. Keep doing what you're doing. The DeYoung is thriving. We're thrilled about it. Now let's bring the park back and open it up to some people. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to... Are you John Green?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, John Green, Randolph Scott, not the actor, unless you've really been around a long time, Mr. Scott. I don't think you look like the actor Randolph Scott. Denise, Dan, again, Leonard Kingsley, and Dr. John Spallone. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't know how I'm going to follow Leah. Thanks for putting my name after hers. I've been a resident in District 5 for about 7 years. I had a whole little story prepared about how my wife and I like to walk in the park, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to talk about that because we've heard so many different things today on both sides. And what seems clear to me, even if they won't say it, all of the people that are opposed, I'm obviously not opposed, right? All the people that are opposed to this, they're doing it because they feel they have to protect their interests, whatever those interests may be. It may be what they think is higher attendance at the museums. Obviously, as Leah showed, that's not the case. I think that there's obviously the ADA stuff. We hear you. I think the people that are pro this hear that, and we want to work to make that access available. These folks, there's no way they could be opposed to the picture, the slide that Leah put on that showed what it looks like on Saturday. They won't admit it, they can't say it, because they're trying to protect their interests. Everyone would love to see the park look like Sundays on Saturdays, as long as all these other things were taken care of. So, I'm not in politics, I'm not, a board member of the Bike Coalition or anything like that, right? Let's do the right thing, let's get it done. Let's do this trial, let's see what all the issues are, let's work it out, and then we adjust. I think that if we closed JFK on Saturdays, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when the rest of the country, Boston and New York and all these places will start to do it on Saturdays as well as Sundays, once again, San Francisco will be the pioneer of something good. We'll look back and we'll go, can you imagine how long it took, what a crazy fight it was? I can't imagine cars in the park on Saturday. So, thanks a lot.
Good afternoon. My name is Randolph Scott. I'm a resident of San Francisco, live at 280 San Marcos Avenue, and I currently serve as the Vice President for Civic Affairs and Audience Development for the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. I'd like to put on the record a resolution that the Board passed yesterday afternoon, and it was a subsequent action, prior actions of discussions with a number of the representatives who have appeared here today, and one notable representative group was not present, and that was the Bicycle Coalition. It's resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Fine Arts Museum does not support the closure of JFK Drive on Saturdays, And be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco call upon its civic leaders, the Board of Supervisors, the Mayor of San Francisco, to support the DeYoung Museum and to oppose the closure of JFK Drive. And be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees would be willing, and has demonstrated that, to support a compromise solution that moves the recreational road closure to another area of the park, and hereby authorizes the President of the Board of Trustees and the Director of the Museums to negotiate with civic leaders and community groups to forge such a solution. It has been remarkable to me that one of the supervisors who wanted to be persuaded of the arguments has absented himself from some of the discussion for most of the afternoon. I'm also, I'd like to take some public exception to a recent article that appeared on Wednesday, April the 12th, 2006, in the San Francisco Chronicle by Leah Shahum, which addressed this issue, and namely, that the letter officially mentions the Chicago Visions, this is a letter from the museum, and an African-American folk art quilt show, both are set to open in July. And her words go on to say that the tablecloth may be damask, but the race card is being played. I found that to be very, very offensive. I think that the fact that I sat here today and was characterized by one of the leaders of the coalition as a liar to be also offensive. And I hope that the process of compromise building that might come out of this effort that has been offered by the board will lead us to another level of civil discourse in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask that everybody please be respectful of one another. Thank you. Denise Dan? Is Denise Dan here? Yeah, Denise Dan, then Leonard Kingsley after Denise Dan, and then Dr. John Spallone, and then Jodie Medeiros and Brian Rogers. Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Denise Diana, and I just want to let you know that Senior Action Network voted for the closure yesterday at our board meeting. And Senior Action Network represents 30,000 seniors and disabled. And I happen to be a senior and also disabled. Now, when I wasn't disabled, occasionally I would drive to the park and try to get to the museum. And I was exhausted by the time I got there, parking way out somewhere. So I don't understand how people can say that by having cars come in the park that you're going to be guaranteed you're going to have a parking spot smack on top of a museum. Well, of course, they'll have a parking garage now on top of the museum, but I have learned to take public transit, and public transit lets me off right in front of the museum and picks me up right in front of the museum. Far easier. I take public transit every single day to come to these meetings. That's about all I do. And I see mothers with children with their little carts. I see cats in carts and dogs in carts. You name it, except for chickens. We got everything on those buses, and people are using them. So the idea that you can't get to the park without public is ridiculous, because you actually get closer to the park to where you want to go by public transit. I think we are a society in denial. We're in the midst of global warming. We are in the midst of pollution caused by automobiles that harm children and elderly, and and yet we persist in encouraging auto use at the expense of our children's health and even their lives. And we know what pollution does to people who have asthma, causes asthma or cancer. What are you going to tell your children later on in life when they say, Mom, I got cancer and I got asthma? You're going to say, well, I'm sorry, darling, but it was more convenient for you to use my car, so tough luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. And let me also note, Supervisor Gerardo Sandoval has had to leave, and we are officially joined by Supervisor Ross Karimi, who is then also officially a member of this committee by appointment by the President of our board, President Aaron Peskin. So thank you, and welcome Supervisor Karimi. Thank you. Hey. Okay.
My name is Leonard Kingsley, and I come wearing certain X hats
I volunteered to be here today, probably out of my mind, but I used to be president of Spur. I chaired the Human Rights Commission in the 1970 excitements. I chaired the San Francisco Foundation, where we're concerned with the balance of the city. And after the Civil War, I was for a few years chairman of the Fine Arts Museum. I want to tell you a story of the Belva Davis experience. She is a trustee of the museum. She's on the building committee. And we were in Switzerland meeting with those architects. As you may recall, there was a slight discussion about the new museum in this community over the last few years, just a little bit. And we were discussing the design and the debate and the lawsuits, and we left the building. As we left the building, the middle of the street turned around and said, "Leonard, it has nothing to do with the design of the museum. It's all politics." And I said, that's very cynical. And then I thought about it these last few years and how pathetic it is right now that these things are so black and white. One of the things that concerns me is that, and by the way, I commend the group that's put this proposition together. It's been very effective and obviously well organized, and I admire anybody who does a job well, and you all did it very well, and it was very impressive, and that's not a facetious comment. What's going on is that this is a big park. The subject came up about why can't we go west. One of the reasons, of course, is politics and the merchants on Stanyan and that sort of subject. But shouldn't a museum be for all kinds of people like it is around the world? And why shouldn't people who don't roller skate and don't run and don't push baby car, why shouldn't they have a right and an opportunity to enjoy the museums? In the major cities of the world, museums are in parks, next to parks. Anyhow, I hope that somehow a reasonable dialogue could actually be established so that it is not just them against us. I think it's a pathetic reflection on our community. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kingsley, I may say thank you very much for your graciousness. Thank you very much for your lifetime of public activity and support. And may I just say, and you can tell Ms. Davis, I'm very, very, very supportive of the Pritzker Prize winning Herzog and de Meuron building. I think it is about the building. I think it's a very, very interesting building. The skin of the building is fantastic, as so much of their work is about the skin of buildings.
We made it.
I'll leave it at that. Yeah, I think the public will find that this building, like the Arc of Triumph, which was originally called a grotesquerie, I suppose, best we can get, by the French people and many architecture critics at that time, we'll find that this grows graciously to be an important part of our city. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Just one comment. I didn't tell you that I came out here 27 years old with a wife, a little baby, and a dog, and no job to live in the city because of a passion for the city, and my passion is still as severe as it was as a young man.
I share that activity. I came out as a 28-year-old man, too. I didn't have the dog, though. Thank you very much. But the same situation. Thank you. It's a great city. It's a great city. Dr. John Spallone, thank you. And then Jodie Medeiros, Brian Rogers, Pat Langdell, Amy, Goldman. Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is John, and I do have 27 years of clinical experience as an optometrist, 21 of those at the Kaiser Permanente Medical Center here in San Francisco. I want to preface my remarks with the disclaimer that although the organizational priorities or perspectives of Kaiser Permanente and mine are often in agreement, I am speaking today as a private citizen and not as a representative of the organization. Now, during my time as a clinician, I have had the unfortunate experience of watching the devastating progression of visual loss upon persons with diabetes. As other speakers have alluded to today, this is becoming an epidemic, and it is especially rampant among young people in our society. Although obesity has been pointed to as a cause of this, when you actually drill down further, you will actually see that inactivity and the resultant resistance to insulin in the body is really a prime driver of the development of diabetes. I really think that we need to foster support for physical activity on the part of our young people, and I speak in favor of the Saturday opening of the park to recreational activity in the interest of allowing those young people to become more active. I have also seen during my time in the integrated healthcare system that Kaiser is, how people in their 70s and even 80s who have remained active have been able to survive without the beta blockers for high blood pressure, the statins for cholesterol, and the anti-hyperglycemics for diabetes. So there is definitely a connection, and I would urge that we support young people in remaining active. Now, I know some people have brought about the perspective that there are other parks and that there are other portions of Golden Gate Park for young people to use. I would have to say that Golden Gate Park is the flagship recreational facility of this city, and the portion of the park of which we speak is the most visible part of that park. And in closing, I will say that there have been allusions to free parking. Please remember, there really is no such thing as free parking. All parking is subsidized, and the parking in Golden Gate Park is subsidized by the citizens at the expense of parkland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jodie Medeiros. Thank you. And then Brian Rogers, Pat Langdell. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Jodie Medeiros, and I'm a District 5 resident. I am here as a citizen and also a car owner, a bicyclist, a resident of San Francisco. We just celebrated last Sunday 39 years of closure for Sundays in Golden Gate Park. It's been a success for 39 years. We're asking for a 6-month trial. I don't understand why 6 months we can't try closing Saturdays. It seems very logical. We've seen photos here today of what the park looks like on Sundays. And I want to reiterate that the park is for people. It's not for cars. That's it. I think everything else today has been expressed. Thank you.
Very much appreciate your brevity and succinct comments. Thank you. And I hope you will be a role model for others. Thank you. Brian Rogers or Pat Langdell. Thank you.
I am Pat Langdell, and I'm representing the Golden Gate Heights Neighborhood Association, which went on record as strongly opposed to closing on Saturdays. I've used the park a lot. We've lived in our home over 50 years. We've raised children. We've spent many hours in the park. And there are many places where you can get exercise without closing JFK. And the people of the city voted against it, and we support that measure. We strongly oppose closing JFK on Saturdays. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amy Goldman? Not Goodman, for sure.
Hello, my name is Amy Goldman, and I'm a resident of the Inner Richmond, and I am in support of Saturday closure. One of the things I love most about this city is going on Sundays to the park, riding through the park, seeing people in open urban space. Having grown up in the suburbs, I didn't see large groups of people spending time together unless it was planned and they knew each other. And what I really appreciate about Sunday closure is that we get a lot of people together, people from different places, people with cars, without cars, on bikes, roller skates, and it's a community. And that's the other thing that I wanted to say. Right now, my partner is writing her thesis on community space and how people talk about their neighborhoods, how they talk about the streets. And she says that a lot of people use the metaphor of feeling unsafe in their streets, unsafe in their neighborhoods, that it's a combative zone, that they're not comfortable there. And what they want is a place where they feel safe, a place where they can go out and enjoy the community, and that often happens when there aren't cars. And so giving this chance and giving us the opportunity to do this on Saturday as well as Sunday will be a great thing for our San Francisco community. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there Brian Rogers here? And Steve Ferrero, Mary Brown, Andrea Combs, Barry Taranto. You come forward. Yes, sir. You speak.
Sorry, this one. Hi, I'm Steve Ferrero. I'm a civil engineer. I'm a fourth-generation San Franciscan. I'm here to support the opening of Golden Gate Park on Saturdays. I've been using, as long as I can remember, the park on Sundays, and my young son is an up-and-coming tricyclist, and he really enjoys Sundays. We go to the Conservatory of Flowers and to the DeYoung on Sundays, and we're part of the upswing in attendance there. And just in general, it makes a lot of sense. I should also mention I was one of the producers of the 2004 San Francisco bicycling calendar, where we showed a picture of 1895 of the Conservatory of Flowers itself teeming with bicyclists. And we dedicated the whole entire calendar to what we call infrastructure for youth. There's a shortage of infrastructure for youth, for skaters. Well, I used to skate in Golden Gate Park. There's a shortage of places to bike. We also dedicated it to the increase in obesity and type 2 diabetes, and I'd like to see this carried forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mary Brown, Andrea Combs, Barry Taranto, Howard Mitchell, Tim Colin, Diana Ketchum.
Sorry, I think my name was called a little bit before. But I think you said Brian Rogers.
Brian Rogers.
Drew Rogers? You sure it doesn't say
Brian Rogers?
I'm Drew Rogers. Is my handwriting that bad?
Yeah.
Is there a Brian Rogers here? Sorry about that, everyone.
Go ahead, Mr. Rogers.
Okay, I'm just a second anyway.
This is your neighborhood.
Thank you.
I'm sure that you get hit with that
Actually,
all
both
the
my
time.
brother and my father are teachers, so I hear that a lot.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I'm here because actually, because I love my mom, and she can't be here right now, and she's a fifth-generation San Franciscan, and it's just a quick story. She lives in Mountain View now, and she does drive, but when she comes to San Francisco, she takes the train down. It's not convenient, but she does it. And then when she gets to the train station, she takes a bus, and I meet her on my bike, and we go to the museum, which we love. And she loves flowers. She's at the conservatory, etc. She's the former president of both the Stanford Music Guild and the Sacred Heart Schools of the United States. She likes her culture, she loves outdoors, and she loves the park. And I'm hoping that one of these days I'm going to be able to get her, because I just got her a bike, on a Saturday bike ride around where I go almost every day. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mr. Rogers. Diana Ketchum, Barbara Thomas, Susan King, Joan Downey, if you come forward, Jean Fraser. Mr. Taranto, I know we called your name. Barry Taranto? Sure. Very good. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Today is a holy day for two different religions. And unfortunately, this holiness today probably would have gotten more participation if it wasn't for that. I want to address several different issues. One, regarding the case of unintended consequences. The fact that Saturdays and Sundays in San Francisco are like day and night. The traffic in San Francisco and the people's lifestyles are totally different on Saturdays than on Sundays. Plus also, parking meters are enforced on Saturdays but not on Sundays, as well as residential parking stickers in some neighborhoods. The concern I have is that on Saturdays, people who live in these areas are going to find themselves without parking spaces on Saturdays as well. DPT does not have enough staff to go around and focus more on one part of the city over another. They are even short-staffed at this time. And so you're looking at creating problems for the neighborhoods around that area. On Sundays it's already a problem, but at least people can park at meters without repercussions. So I'm saying that this initiative is going to be a boon for Fisherman's Wharf and other those recreation areas. There's so many other park areas they can use for their purposes. Regarding taxi service, on Saturdays and Sundays, the least experienced cab drivers work in the city. They already have enough rules, regulations, streets to learn, areas to go, routes to take. It's more than to try and teach them how to take the seniors and disabled on Saturdays as well as Sundays. And so you're not going to be able you can provide them with the water, but you can't bring a horse to drink. You can't do that. There are already too many rules and regulations, and there's already impacts financially on drivers to try and teach them to better serve the disabled and seniors on Saturdays as well as Sundays. And also, I think it's important that other city bodies and commissions have a say in this before you make a final decision.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the time you take on this, but there are unintended consequences that are impacted by this.
Okay,
and also, Golden Gate Park is not just a city park.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Susan King, Joan Downey, and Jean Fraser.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Jake, for your leadership on this issue. It's really nice to see you taking such a strong position in favor of the many people, including myself, who have been calling for greater access for different types of recreation and the preservation, essentially, of what Golden Gate Park was built and intended to. I can only say that the ghost of John McLaren is probably rolling in his grave if he could see what his beautiful park has become. Because I live next to the park. I've lived near the park for 18 years, and it's essentially a freeway. Creating a car-free space will help create more recreation in the park. I'm a member of the Green Party, and I wanted to just say a couple things. The San Francisco Green Party vigorously opposed the parking garage in Golden Gate Park, and we've also vigorously opposed the cross-traffic that's been allowed to traverse through Golden Gate Park. Regardless, these two features play very well into the creation of a car-free Saturday because they address the majority of the concerns that the museums and the car advocates that have put forward as opposition to Car-Free Sunday. There is plenty of automobile access. There are plenty of places for people to drive their cars. There aren't plenty of places for people to ride their bicycles. There are not plenty of places for people with families to recreate with their children. I refer to this as car-free, not a closure of the park, but an opening of the park. It creates more access and more opportunities for families that are leaving the city. And I just wanted to thank you again for this, and I really urge you to strongly support this, and thank you, Ross, for also being supportive.
Thank you very much. And I was going to point out, and you just did, certainly Supervisor Mir Karimi, sitting to my left, is also an equal co-sponsor of this legislation. And then we had some other sponsors come on as well, Supervisor Peskin, Supervisor Sandoval, Supervisor Amiano. So you do have strong support on your Board of Supervisors. So thank you. Joan Downey, Jean Fraser. Jean Fraser, you're up next. Jean Fraser. Nancy Bodkin, Robin Levitt, then Howard Strassner. Okay, so I just wanted to get the...
Good afternoon,
Thank
Supervisors. Jean Fraser. I am here in my private capacity as a resident of the Richond District. I also run the San Francisco Health Authority, which runs the Healthy Kids and Young Adults program. But I am here in my private capacity. First, I want to thank both of you for sponsoring this legislation. This is long overdue. It is essentially just the end of the deal. The deal was that the garage would be built, and then Saturday opening of the park to other people besides merely museum goers, although I will say that the only time that I visit the museums, which I love, and the conservatory with my two children is actually on Sundays because we like to enjoy both the museums and then go out and use the car-free space. But from the perspective, I think, of many people in the city, this is really just the end of the deal. The museums wanted and believed they needed the garage. There were many of us who didn't believe that was appropriate, that we shouldn't encourage more cars to come to the park. However, in the end, that was supported. So once that was supported, the other side of the deal is that the closure would happen. What is sad here, and I think you should think about this from a political perspective, is whether you should reward the museums by by allowing them to change their mind on this deal at this point. That, to me, doesn't seem to be a particularly savvy thing to do. And let me also say my position is not only informed by being the mother of 2 small children, and let me say to the Richond Park folks, there are no other places in the city where children can learn to skate and bike. I know this personally. We've taken bikes and roller skates to neighborhood parks and been told by the supervisors there that our children cannot bike or skate there, that the only place that is available is Golden Gate Park on Sundays. So in our efforts at the Health Authority to try to improve the health of children in the city, it is critical that we create more spaces for children to learn activities that they can then do lifelong to live a healthy life. Thank you again for your support of this legislation.
Thank you very much. Nancy Botkin, Robin Levitt, Howard Strassner, Susan Witka, Christina Carpenter, and James Motley. Okay.
Hi, I'm Joan Downey. You had called
Yes,
me
Joan.
before.
Thank you.
Thank you for sponsoring this, and thank you, Ross, for co-sponsoring this. I'm here as a board member of Rescue Muni to say that Rescue Muni supports this legislation because it makes sense for a transit-first city. I'm also a board member of the Coal Valley Improvement Association. The board also supports closing JFK to cars and opening it up for people on Saturday. We're in the southeast part of the park. I'm also a neighbor. I live 1 block south of the park, and I've lived there for 30 years. I don't see any difference as far as parking in the neighborhood, between Saturdays and Sundays. It's all the same. It's not good, but it's all the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Nancy Botkin, Howard Strassner. Come on up, Howard. Sure.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Howard Strassner for the Sierra Club. First, the Sierra Club certainly supports this. It just makes more of our park a real park. And then I want to correct some of the misunderstandings that have come forth from other testifiers. When the parking data that was given early this afternoon was data based on after the academy opens, when the garage begins to some days almost full up, and that was, just want to correct that. The other thing is that this is we're getting ready we're finally talking about this after so many years, whether the park is a parking lot. Everybody who lives near the park says, oh, it's okay for people to park in the park. It's okay for people to drive in the park. And this is our park. And we're saying, now we're hoping for 2 days a week, it's not so good to drive in one little piece of park. This is a very simple matter. And that's why the Sierra Club is really strong about this. Now I want to talk about the other. When someone said, this is politics. It's not politics. It's parking, which maybe that's the same thing. There's no difference. And when you look behind what Dede Wilsey said, what she's looking for is free parking for museum employees. That's not what the city's about. We don't provide free parking for any employees. We believe that, you should use transit if you're an employee. That's what half of us do downtown, and the others pay very dearly for this. So that's the other part of it. We also hear during the afternoon that there's a lot of need for more white paint and blue paint in various places. I think one of the things that wasn't mentioned by the city attorney, maybe we need some white zones and blue zones on Fulton Street, because this is very close and easy drop-off in some cases. People won't even have to enter the park. Again, you shouldn't have to enter the park if you're not going to really be there. One of the high things, people talk about access. When I go to the museum, the high thing about this, after you see all the beautiful stuff and you walk out in a beautiful park, that's what really makes everything work. So walking a little bit is okay. Our park department says that closing down streets is good for, increases the use of the park. That's why they talk about closing other parts. So, and the Sierra Club will also support closing other parts, but it can be an addition. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I wonder if I just pause for a moment, because I know the opposition and things like that around this issue some years ago, and the folks who have been speaking here about some of this maybe would want to get some furtherance of what's in the record here. We have a letter here dated April the 10th, 2006. It says, after a great deal of thought and consideration, I have decided to support the testing of Saturday closing of Golden Gate Park to vehicular traffic. Most importantly, I believe that at the time the city voted on propositions F and G, most of us working for G came out in favor of a test of Saturday closure. I know I did. I do not intend to go back on my word. Therefore, I will support the test closure. At the end of 6 months, the city can take another look. Regards, Warren Hellman. And as many of you know, Mr. Hellman, I think, is trying to be true to his word. Mr. Hellman is the gentleman who did the fundraising to actually build that garage and raise the money for that. And so I think it is important that we make sure that you know that's in the record. And we move forward. Mr. Levitt, Robin Levitt.
Thank you, Supervisors. Robin Levitt. I want to express my how grateful I am for you to introduce this legislation. I just want to talk a little bit about the access issue. It's a very compelling argument that people with disabilities should be able to access the park and so forth. But I had a personal experience this week. My father is visiting from out of town. My father is 89 years old. He gets around with a walker. He cannot walk. He wanted me to take him through the park on one of those bicycle surreys that you see. And so we were going to do it on last Sunday. It rained last Sunday. Had we been able to go on Saturday, we would have gone on Saturday. Now my father can't go. Well, the point is that while we can't control the rain, there are many people, for whatever reason, that can't use the park on Sundays and can only use it on Saturdays. And there are people with disability problems that do enjoy the park on Sundays. And so the Saturday opening of the park would be a benefit for them as well. Just another thing I wanted to mention, too, is that I've heard this argument from the museums, the institutions in the park before, when we were fighting the Central Freeway. And I recall back in 1996-97, the institutions spearheaded the effort to rebuild the Central Freeway and were opposed to Octavia Boulevard, and saying that the institutions would die if there was not access from the freeway to those institutions. We see now that that's not the case. The institute, the Young, is thriving after the opening of Octavia Boulevard and the closure of the Central Freeway. So this is a really disingenuous argument that we hear from them. But I just want to mention that all these institutions really could benefit from the closure on Saturday. They've got all these people there right in their front door that they could get to come to their institutions. And if they would do some outreach, I think they'd find that they would benefit from this as well. Thank you very much.
Mr. Levitt. Again, Susan Witka, Christina Carpenter, James Motley, James Thomas, Jane, I'm sorry, from the Fine Arts Museum, Toffee, it's hard to read, Howard Mitchell. Okay, thank you. Hello.
Hi, my name is Susan Witka. I'm a homeowner in the Richmond District, and I thank my supervisor, McGoldrick, for sponsoring the legislation that we've been waiting for so long. And I got confused when I heard about it because I thought the digging of the parking garage was going to solve all this. But anyway, I'm a teacher at Washington High School, and as the years go on, I see less joy in the eyes of my students and more worry and stress. Stress in school, stress of their families in this family-unfriendly city with such high housing costs. The families are struggling. And my students look forward to Saturday and Sunday hanging out with their friends. But where do they go? An outdoor place that's safe and they can be carefree. Saturdays and Sundays in the park. They're off both Saturdays and Sundays. They should have both of those options to be carefree with their friends, skating, roller skating, rollerblading, bicycling, and we have this obesity problem in our youth that would help solve that. So I would say, in answering this, let's think of the youth of our city. They take Muni And let's also think that we have the motto of a transit-first city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker. And again, more names if you need. Howard Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm James Motley, and I represent the security staff at the Fine Arts Museums. We should have these problems in Fairmount Park, huh?
Yeah, Fairmount Park, for people's information, you must be from Philly, too.
Yes, sir. West Philadelphia.
Used to run in Philadelphia. Fairmount Park, the largest urban park in the entire world, Fairmount Park.
Yes, sir. It's the largest city park in the country, yes.
I spent the first 20 years of my life here.
Yeah, my daughter just graduated at Temple University.
You got it.
Anyhow, I represent the security staff and most of the employees in the museums. We're Local 790 SEIU, as my predecessor Jim Bryant was saying. There's also some issues as far as the union contracts, who will be manning the gates and the barricades in the park. We have a problem with that right now. We have a very hard problem getting to work on Sundays. We can just imagine how tough it's going to be on Saturdays. We don't support the closure on Saturday without more studies from the labor side. And we think that once we have enough room for everyone in the park, we believe. And I just wanted to make a statement for the labor issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Motley. Lorenzo Serrano against Stephen Chapman, Deb James, Drew Rogers, Bert Hill. Any folks here that I called? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Come on up if I called your name. If I called your name, come on up. Yeah?
Hi, my name is Stephen Chapman, and I would like to thank you for allowing me to speak today on this important issue. I would especially like to thank Supervisor McGoldrick for carrying this long-awaited piece of legislation. I'm here today on behalf of the Alliance for Golden Gate Park. We are a diverse group of citizens who believe that the park should be, first and foremost, for the benefit of the people of this city, for legitimate recreational purposes. We are not elitist, nor even anti-car per se. We simply believe that parks are for people, and that closing JFK to private automobiles on both weekend days is a step in the right direction. The principal opposition to this legislation is coming to you today from persons involved with the new DeYoung Museum. They argue that they need every available parking space to ensure continuing accessibility, and that removing approximately 450 spaces from JFK Drive 1 extra day a week is or will have disastrous consequences for their bottom line. And what irks me especially about all this is the bad faith of the museum's representation and outreach. At the time of Prop J, they argued that the underground garage was necessary because of existing and future road closures. Now they change their tune and argue that they need all available free parking in the park. Supervisors, what you have before you today is a clear case of private interests versus the public good. I would appeal to Supervisor Maxwell in particular to think of all the families in this city, and especially to think of the families who don't have summer homes in the wine country or large backyards, and for whom having a park is absolutely essential. I urge you to weigh in the balance all the interests involved here and to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else whose name I called? Otherwise, here's some more. John Laskin, Louis Basteri, Choi, Vincent Ushikubo, excuse me if I butcher your names, Michael Collins, Pat Kilduff, Dave Givey, come on up. Sure. Yeah, if it comes close.
Mr. Serrano
Yes.
has departed for the
Okay.
8th Philip Randolph
Go ahead.
Institute. So I'm Jane Coffey from the Fine Arts Museums
Sure.
of San Francisco, protective officer.
Yeah.
And I wanted to express my greetings to all my brothers and sisters in the Bicycle Coalition. And I also wanted to sort of reiterate what James Bryant said earlier. I really believe that conciliation is the way, and I wish that labor could get together with all the parties in the room and cobble together some kind of agreement to make this to make some kind of contract that's going to work for everybody. The gentlemen and the women that I work with who were in the chamber for several hours had to depart for a big party tonight that's honoring Coretta Scott King and Rosa Parks. So those women are being feted tonight at the Marriott Hotel. And in regards to their tradition of conciliation, I regret that my coworkers had to depart. But I want to talk to you briefly about the economic impact of closing the park on Saturdays. What it would do is impact protective officers, our entire cafe staff, bussers, waiters, chefs, cooks, line cooks, custodial people. That's our custodian help, as well as the rest of a very large staff. And the extraordinary thing about what's happened since Mr. Parker left and Mr. Buchanan arrived at our work site is that we really were able to cobble together a wonderful coalition, and we've referred to it as our own rainbow coalition of women and minorities who we were able to recruit by a very intensive effort with Mr. Parker. So we were actually able to put together dozens and dozens and dozens of this constituency who currently are employed in Department 61 to our great pleasure. The work site has never been this integrated, so we're absolutely delighted. And we want those people to continue working. Mr. Buchanan has proven to be very receptive to the labor force, and we have very productive conversations with him. So it's my hope that we could hold off on making a determination, get together with the bike coalition, with labor. I'd hereby like to extend an invitation. And I'd also like to thank you for your graciousness this afternoon. It's been a very long go. Thanks kindly.
Before you go, through the chair, I'm the chair. I have a question, and that is, I don't understand why this is an issue with why you feel like, do you think you're going to have layoffs? According to what I see here, the DeYoung attendance, I just don't see that as being the case.
Yeah.
I think the most what I've seen that really makes the biggest difference is Free Tuesday. And I think that if we want to really make a difference, it's about being free on Tuesday. And if we need more attendance, we should consider something like that. But from this, I don't see where there's such a big difference in Saturday and Sunday, and people still come to the museums.
Right.
So that's why I'm not sure.
Yeah. I guess the dynamics of our institution is that we're so new. The renovated site is only 6 months open to the public. So I think once that spike decreases, there's a concern about revenues.
Yes, but Sundays have been free for over 39 years, and so it's
and I think Saturdays have become of a big concern. We currently have a major show mounted. We'll have a major show at the Legion in June, but I think the concern is once the novelty of the building, if it should wear off, how are you going to continue to make the revenue stream continue, and how would you therefore continue to employ this vast group of people who have
I think
come in?
that is something, but I also think that it's somebody mentioned it earlier about a marketing strategy, and if you've known that Sundays, according to them, have been low, what have you done about it? And if you can certainly see that a Free Tuesday really makes a difference, and maybe something should be done. But I just think that there might be other marketing strategies that can help do that without laying people off. I don't know, but it just seems like a real something that I'm not sure about.
Right. I certainly can't speak for Mr. Buchanan, but certainly from the labor contingent on behalf of Mr. Bryant, we'd be more than happy to have you convene a group where we could just sit down and have the discussion about Tuesday with Mr. Buchanan at your leisure.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Next speaker, sir. Are you Dave? John Laskin? Yes, Mr. Laskin.
Supervisor Maxwell, you may remember that I am a Golden Gate Park Saturday baseball player. Obviously, Sup McGoldrick will vote in favor of it. Supervisor Maxwell, please mention when it goes to the full board about a deadly embrace between Sup McGoldrick and the proponents. It's the kiss of death. Here's why. Similar committee meeting 2 years ago, Matt Gonzalez said 30% of households here do not have cars. We need to get people out of their cars. My point is, there's 70% of us have cars, and what's going to happen, it will be put on the ballot, and I think what the automobile haters are looking at, they could lose their Sunday exclusivity. They would be wiped out completely. That would be the nuclear option. I think that the museum should go for that. They made the mistake of making nice with people who did not want them in the park. By the way, I've had enough of this city. I don't appreciate Supervisor McGoldrick's war on automobile parking on Geary Boulevard and not allowing cars to go downtown where I live, and also Supervisor Sandoval's not wanting people to park the car on their own front yard. Now, you think people want to park their car on their own front yard? No, it's because there's no place to park. Let's get it on, Supervisor McGoldrick. Let's get it on, because these people who outnumber me so much here are going to lose. Let's get it on.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Dave.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for letting me speak. My name is Dave DeGive. I'm a San Francisco resident, and I want to encourage you that I'm in favor of the closure and opening up the park on Saturdays for skaters and families to recreate. One thing I want to make clear is that I think everyone here is in favor of museums, and that museums are a good thing. And the reason museums are good because they celebrate culture and they celebrate past lives and they allow us to see how people lived. So what my question is, what about our current life now? 100 years from now, what are the museums going to display about us? Are they going to display us staying inside, or are they going to display people in cars and blocked roads? Or are they going to display a vibrant culture of people out enjoying their lives and families enjoying the weekends together? So, again, I think museums are good, but let's give the museums 100 years from now something good to display about our culture. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. DeGive. Pat Kilduff, Otis Lawson, David Freeman, Glenn Bailey, Glenn Harvey, Frank Chan, and Dave Snyder. And Dave Snyder is the last card. Thank you.
Hi, Supervisors. Pat Kilduff from the California Academy of Sciences. And we're opposed to this legislation because we're not open now in the park. So it seems an odd time to us for this trial period to occur. I can't speak to the DeYoung's attendance figures, but I have given the attendance for the last 3 years we were open in the park, and our attendance was higher by 10% on Saturdays over Sundays. And we're assuming that when we go back, if the closure on Sundays would also have our attendance be lower. We're just assuming that, but the data isn't in. So we would like to see this trial period occur after we're open, and at that time that the measures of success or failure, what exactly we're looking for, and how we're going to gather the data and analyze that data be part of the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kilduff. Next speaker, any others? Otis Lawson, the names that I called? Any others? No. On the names that I called? Okay. And if anybody else would like to speak, please come forward. Yes, please come forward, sir.
Hello. My name is Glenn Harvey. I'm a citizen, not a member of a coalition, but a native San Franciscan, longtime resident of the Sunset, the Inner Sunset specifically. And, I'm winging it here. I just came in because I heard that the meeting was going on, and I wanted to express my opinion. primarily on behalf of all the people who live in the Sunset in the western part of the city who can't be here or, are not part of a coalition. As I said before, I'm here as a citizen and a native son. I think that this decision or this attempt to close the parks on Sundays as well as they are already closed on Saturday is an effort to circumvent the decisions that the people had made previously in a general election. And I think that you're not taking into consideration the impact for the neighboring communities or areas like the inner Sunset, all along Irving Street, 9th Avenue, etc., my side of the park now, and then Fulton, etc., as far as the congestion, our inability to conduct business on those days as well as Saturdays, our days off. I'm taking this time because I think that the Board of Supervisors of the recent years has not been serving the western portion of the city well at all. I think that the Octavia Street bypass that we had, the loss of the Central Freeway, makes it extremely difficult for us to get to work in the East Bay if we want to get to the Bay. Traffic's backed up for blocks in the early morning commute hours, and if we have to go to San Mateo or we have to go across a bridge for work, not everybody necessarily comes in here to do a job. And I think that you guys don't have any plans about the impact to the people who live in the western portion of the city. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Next speaker. Thank you.
Hello. My name is David Freeman. I was born and raised in San Francisco. I lived here all my life. I was talking about, thank you for supporting the schools, Mr. Ross. For George Peabody, I was supporting George Peabody on keeping the schools open. Right now, we are getting ready to put on an event to go to Golden Gate Park because we couldn't get insurance to cover all the kids, to teach them how to skate safe, safety protection gear, how to fall. We could not get any insurance to insure the schools because we didn't know how to word it. The insurance companies didn't want to insure that. So what better place to go to was the Golden Gate Park where it was free. We didn't have to find insurance. We could provide them all the safety nets. Don't have to worry about cars hitting the kids. So as far as bringing other kids and getting them out of the schools and trying to get healthy, that's what we plan to do, go to schools and bring them out from their homes to skate in the parks on Saturdays and Sundays and teach them safety. So that's one reason why we like to have the schools closed. But I really appreciate you taking the time for doing that. I really had a great speech to do this. I have kids. I have 2 generations of kids that I've raised here. I'm 45 years old. I have 22 and 24 who were born and raised going through the parks. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people come together, get married, get divorced, have kids, but they all met each other in the park on Sundays. So it's not just a matter of going to a park on Sundays and going to a museum, because we, the people, come there, we go to the museums, and we go to other places in the park, and we find mates, and we have great time, and I think it'd be a waste not to close the parks on Saturdays, because it will provide people that come in on the weekends before they have to leave on Sundays to go back home to come out and enjoy another day on a Saturday. That's very important because most people come only on Fridays and Saturdays and go back home on Sundays because they got to get to work for travel. So a Saturday would bring in more people to the park for the museums and for everywhere else that would like to have more people and more revenues. So I think it would be a good thing to have the park closed on Saturdays. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Next speaker, please.
Hello, I'm Frank Chan, District 3 Bicycle Advisory Committee Representative and Secretary. I think it is indeed different than 2000. I think we need Healthy Saturdays more than ever near the geographical center of the city and near the Stanton Street bike shops. That's one benefit of it being there instead of the west side. While I am a commuting cyclist and I have raced before, this is different. This really isn't for me. This isn't for the Lycra spandex crowd. This is for beginners and kids to learn how to bike, walk, and run around without getting plowed by SUVs. And I think that's a lot less elitist and a lot cheaper to put up some barricades than funding some obscure relics from centuries past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Glenn Bailey. I actually am a visitor here. This week I came up for the Centennial on Tuesday, heard about this issue on TV, and happened to be here just to let you know that I've been visiting San Francisco for about 20 years. And last fall I was up shortly after Dede opened up and decided I'd see what the new facility looked like. Took a bus. Didn't know that there was a bus that came right to the entrance, so I had to walk several blocks through the park. And I'm glad that happened because I wouldn't have seen the Rose Garden. I wouldn't have seen a lot of things, and it was very enjoyable. I have been in the park on Sundays over those years, and as a visitor, and I know we don't get to vote for you or against you, but I think we contribute a lot of economic impact to this city. I think that I tell my friends, when you come to San Francisco, do not rent a car. It's a disincentive to have a vehicle in terms of parking, everything. Use the public transit, see the city that way. And so I really believe that if there's an additional day for people like myself who are visiting a city to be able to enjoy Golden Gate Park, which I consider the Central Park of the West Coast, that'll just broaden our experiences and our opportunity to enjoy more of this city. So frankly, I'd like to see it 7 days a week. It's certainly very easy to get to the park with transit. And even for people like me who don't really know exactly where all the routes are and how to get there, I mean, I had no problems. I can't imagine anybody else who certainly knows their way around can just drive into a parking structure. That seems like a no-brainer there. So I think this is a proposal that I think if it gets on the news wires, I think you'll get nationwide publicity, by taking this further action. I think it will just contribute more to the reputation of this city of forward-looking, and I would encourage you to move ahead with this.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, hello. Oh, you don't have to tell if you don't want, but would you mind if we ask where you're from?
Well, I hate to admit it, but I'm from Encino, which is in the San Fernando Valley, which is part of the city of Los Angeles.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Great. Okay. Speaking of history, you may or may not know that the first underground parking garage with a public space over top of it of great significance was Union Square, designed by the great San Francisco architect Timothy Pfluger. And that became a model around the country, and onward and upward. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave Snyder. I'm president of Transportation for a Livable City. Our executive director is here to speak on behalf of our organization, so I will take the opportunity to speak personally. I want to thank people and then make just one point about voters' intent. First of all, I want to thank the supervisors who support this for standing up to the swells. Thank you. And I want to thank Warren Hellman, with whom I've disagreed on practically everything, for being good to his word on this one. I think that shouldn't have to take as much courage as it appears to take. I'm glad that he is doing that. And that relates to my point, which is that in 2000, when voters were faced with Prop F and Prop G, they were faced with a choice. Do we want to close JFK Drive now to cars and open it for recreation, or do we want to wait until the garage is in place? The people who said, go ahead and close it now, represented 46% of the people. The people who said, no, let's wait until the garage is in place, represented 38% of the people. We don't have the polling data specifically to show, but I think it's safe to assume that a strong majority of the San Franciscans voted in 2000 to say, yes, we want Saturday closure. Most of us, or almost most of us, want it right now, but a strong majority of us want it once the garage is in place. So I don't think that this legislation goes against voters' intent at all. I think that it very, very carefully adheres to what they wanted, and I'm proud of you for pushing this forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have some other names: Chris Duderstadt, Tomasita Medal, and Tom Radulovich.
There has been a lot of passion and a lot of things said here today.
Sir? Mr. Duderstadt, you want to give your name for the record?
My name is Chris Duderstadt.
Yeah.
I'm representing San Francisco tomorrow, and I could go on the list, but you probably keep it short here. It is Good Friday, and I'm here to give you some good news. From what we hear from the president of the Fine Arts Museums today, and this is information we haven't had before, their current attendance is running at about 2 million people a year. Granted, they may not have that this year, but this is the level of visitorship that they're seeing right now, predicated on that. We have a garage that was put in place to serve institutions that felt that they didn't have adequate parking on Sunday, particularly. We all knew this. We put a garage there. We also have 3 EIRs. Now, if we believe the EIRs, which are not generated by the DeYoung Museum, they're generated by our planning department with consultants that look at museums all over the country, the estimated attendance for these institutions was 600 for the Academy, 900 for the Academy, 600 for the DeYoung. We're talking about 1.5 million visitors is what is projected for these institutions after they're open and the novelty wears off. Now, we can throw that out and the DeYoung can say, who would have known? The reality is their attendance will drop back. The reality is the garage is not full. I ask you to look at this image. This was last Sunday. They had 9,000 visitors in the park. At 12:30, and I was at the press conference with you, Supervisors McGolrick, so I wasn't there in between. But this is the front door of the DeYoung Museum. There is parking available in this garage. It does work. To argue that people have to have free parking when it costs them $25 to go to the museum, I think is facetious. And I also would suggest that we put measures in this to look at ADA issues. The DeYoung Museum itself does not have the simplest of ADA access. My local burrito place has ADA access better than the DeYoung Museum. We definitely need to work at this, and thank you for all your effort.
Thank you, Mr. Duderstadt. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, friends. I'm Tomasita Nadal, and I'd like you to ask yourselves, just think about the thousands of people who can't be here on a weekday afternoon because they have to work and they don't have the power to get off in the middle of a weekday afternoon, even if it is Good Friday. Think of all the thousands, hundreds of thousands of Bay Area families that have to get up before the sun rises, take their showers, get presentable for their work, feed their children, get their children ready for school, take them to daycare or take them to school, get to work, and whether they have to be in an office, being presentable and pleasant all day, or whether they're delivering the mail or they're walking 8 miles as the PG&E meter readers do each day. Whatever they do all day long, those 8 mandatory minimum hours, if they are lucky enough to just be able to survive in this city with only one job. Many thousands have to have 2 jobs in order to survive in this city. Then after work, they get their children from daycare, come home and prepare a meal, try to eat with the family, bathe the children that are small, maybe have some quality time, maybe bathe the children and then go to bed and get up the next morning and do it all over again. They either work 40 hours or they work 80 hours in order to survive in our Bay Area. And on weekends, they might go to church on Sundays, they have to do the laundry and buy the groceries. Do you really think that they're all excited to ride a bicycle on Sundays? Do you think they have the extra energy? Or if they have Sunday that they go to church and Sunday that they do the other chores, they have one day of full recreation with their families, and don't you think that it's fair to give them a choice on how they get to the park, and don't they have an equal right to pull up to any spot in the park and put their blanket out and bring out their picnic lunch and bring out their grandparents and their children? Please vote no on this elitist proposal. Thank you.
Next speaker, please, Mr. Radulovich, and that's the last card, but if anybody would like to speak, please feel free to come forward after Mr. Radulovich. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Tom Radulovich. I'm Executive Director of Transportation for Livable City, and of course we support this. We've supported this for a long time. Golden Gate Park was built and inspired by Central Park, which was designed by Frederick Law Olmsted. And these great landscape parks were designed to be respites from the stresses and strains of urban life. The roads in these parks were designed as carriage drives for slow-moving traffic, and these were supposed to be a refuge because there was traffic in the 1860s in New York and places like San Francisco. And I think on Sundays, this park is a respite. We see huge numbers of people flocking to the park. At the time we last discussed this, which was 2000, this was the single most popular recreation program in the entire city. More people go to the Sunday closure than go to any other thing that the Rec and Park Department does. And we want that respite from the stresses and strains of urban life, which have only gotten worse, to continue. We want people to have that option on Saturdays as well. Cities around the world are doing this. New York City has created a great pedestrian path on its waterfront. Paris is closing roads on weekends along the Seine and through the neighborhoods so that people can walk and bicycle and rollerblade. We absolutely need to do this. It's what makes urban life bearable, is to be able to have a place where you can walk, bicycle, rollerblade safely. I wanted to give you two anecdotes, though, wearing my BART director hat. I've been on the BART Board of Directors 9 years, which is forever. We've been discussing this forever. I have numerous times said to representatives of the cultural institutions, hey, we will promote people getting to the park on transit. I'll put banners up, I'll put all this stuff, because the transit connections are there. People just don't know about them. I'll help you market. They all, of course, politely say, oh, great, we'll get back to you. Never have they got back to me. So, of course, we need to expand access, but that's going to happen after we have Saturday closure. You can't say, there's been no initiative on the part of the cultural institutions. They'll do it if it's important to them to get folks there. But we can't wait for them anymore because there's been no action in the 6 years since this was last discussed. They have not been proactive. Lastly, I have a colleague who worked for the Unity Council in Fruitvale. They would get passes all the time for the Golden Gate Park and for the DeYoung. They try to give them to low-income families. The families there wouldn't take them. They couldn't get to the park. We've done a horrible job in terms of making that park accessible to transit-dependent people. We need to do better. Please support Healthy Saturdays. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Radulovich. Next speaker, please. Again, if there anyone else who wants to speak, please come on forward and follow this gentleman. Thank you.
My name is Bert Hill. I'm sorry, I didn't understand my name being called earlier. I did turn in a card, and I was waiting patiently. I apologize.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, both sponsors and supervisors, for being able to reconsider this and for listening. And also thank you to the doctor who worked at Kaiser, who talked a lot about the health aspects of this. I want to say, first of all, that in talking about, I'm going to concentrate on the eastern end of the park and why that's important. I don't think a lot of people have talked to that specifically. One reason is that the public transit access is so much better. The vast majority of the population of San Francisco is near the east end of the park, not the west end. As you know, the park occupies about 1/3 of the distance across the city. So in order for the maximum number of families and people with strollers, people who don't have to travel as far, is to get to the eastern side of the park by public transportation and by other means so that they can take advantage of it. Putting it out in the west isn't going to help people who don't have a car to get out there. And I would say also that I just want to make one note in the beginning. I'm a little concerned about all the talk about the disabled. It's almost like someone is trying to pit the people who believe in walking and bicycling against the disabled. I'm afraid that's a bit of a red herring. I don't know anyone who would in any way want to compromise the ability of the disabled to be able to get in and enjoy the park facilities as much as anyone else. I myself, as Supervisor Mercarimi heard the other day, am asthmatic. Luckily, the drugs that we have today for asthma are very good and they control it quite well. But an essential part of that is getting fresh air and getting exercise. And it's really important that everyone get that exercise. The public transit systems that service, for instance, from the Bay Shore, the new metro system that's coming in, will be able to, with transfer, get you near enough that you can walk and bike pretty close to the Panhandle. It takes you to the Wiggle, and something could be accommodated. One of the things that Muni is working on. Would you like me to go on, or Okay. One of the things that we were working on that we tested recently was bikes and strollers on the metro train. The hours for use, how to accommodate it, maybe taking out one of the benches, one of the non-ADA benches so that we can hang and put things in, so that families will be able to use electric traveling vehicles like the metro to be able to get close to the park. So it will be accessible, so you don't have to have a car for lower income people to be able to access it. The 44 gets there now, and it has bike racks, but it's difficult for a family to get there in that way. So I just want to close in leaving one last point that I don't think anyone has mentioned. When there are bicyclists and walkers and strollers on Kennedy Drive, they are not wearing out the road. You're going to get, as you know, there's a $20 million issue. Okay, all right, I'll leave you alone. But anyway, we're going to get a lot more use out of that road if every day was for bicyclists.
Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on this item? Any other speakers? Very well, then we're going to close public comment on this item. And Supervisor Mercarimi. Go.
Thank you, Supervisor McGoldrick and Chair Maxwell, for this opportunity to join you in the committee today. I very much am in support of this legislation. I am not approaching this in terms of my advocacy as somebody as a bike advocate or somebody who is sort of a pedestrian rights advocate. I'm approaching it from an economic perspective. Not just a healthy Saturdays perspective, but an economics perspective. What is disconcerting about the opposition to the pilot of trying to close Golden Gate Park on Saturdays for 6 months is that when Props F and G were entertained by the voters, at the time there was not an 800-unit garage in Golden Gate Park. And at the time, there was not the removal of hundreds and hundreds of parking spaces from within Golden Gate Park. There was no consideration or discussion whatsoever, because I think that it was the implication back then that once a garage would be built, then those clients of the garage, those who would utilize the garage, would come naturally. Quite frankly, I think the garage potentially is a boondoggle. I think it's a boondoggle into the city that the city ultimately will have to absorb, quite likely, the expense of maintaining that garage. Closure on Sunday so far has proven, based on the attendance records of those who are driving through and parking at the garage per se, that it is not necessarily going to pay for itself. It also shows that our neighborhoods that surround Golden Gate Park are are incurring those who decided not to use the garage because they haven't been retrained, because they don't realize they can't park in Golden Gate Park anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. And the fact that why wouldn't we have Saturday closure? If the intention is to make sure that this garage works, if the intention is to provide access to the Conservatory of Flowers and to our museums, as what was predicated with the whole intention of Proposition J, then we should satisfy that objective in doing everything we possibly can in order to make sure that garage works. We're stuck with it. Let's make it happen. Let's make it work economically. Saturday closure is only going to do what we foresee is our contribution to making sure that that garage works. It makes sure that the neighborhoods that run adjacent to Golden Gate Park, especially in Districts 5, in District 1, and in District 4, are not going to be overburdened by those cars who will now be searching for parking, free parking, that has now been eliminated as a result of the installation of that garage. All the testimony that I've heard here, it's as if people did not factor in the equation. You can't park in the garage and you can't park in the park anymore. That was the trade-off. And the trade-off is certainly where we're not going to allow for just sort of this open-ended, you are now parking in our districts for free simply without paying some kind of price, or the people who live there or shop there are going to pay some kind of price. This is not about politics. This is about economics. But I'm reminded about the politics back in the year 2000, and I'm sure this came up before earlier in the testimony, of those who were against Saturday closure and those who were adamantly against Saturday closure by supporting Proposition G, and those who are against Saturday closure today, when they wrote the paid argument in favor of Proposition G, as really kind of a spin to try to confuse voters. And when we see what they wrote, Proposition G is the fair and responsible way to implement Saturday closure. It ensures access to the DeYoung Museum for all San Franciscans, including families with children, seniors, and the disabled. Allows for trial closures to study the impacts of Saturday closure on Golden Gate Park's neighbors, institutions, and park users. Allows for study and mitigation of parking traffic, transit, and access for all park users. Enacts Saturday closure after the opening of the Music Concourse underground parking facility. Ensures the maximum enjoyment and the minimum inconvenience to all park users. Signed by the President of the Board of Trustees of the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco. Signed by the Director of Museums for the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco. I believe it's a Shakespearean term by saying, hoist by your own petard. It was the ricochet of the very logic that they used in order to fight off Saturday closures while at the same time trying to advocate for the installation of an 800-unit garage, that now the very arguments that they're using is now completely unjustified, and it makes this whole discussion completely surreal. We are doing the very thing that they had taken money out to then go ahead in the ballot handbook to justify their actions back in 2000, and we are complying with that very intent. This is a sensible piece of legislation in terms of a 6-month closure. This is the kind of legislation, quite frankly, I think we should do a 1-year pilot program. 6 months unto itself is a negotiation. This Board of Supervisors just last November unanimously passed with the mayor Proposition G, which passed overwhelmingly by the voters in San Francisco. That demonstrated the goodwill and good faith of this branch, both legislative and executive, working with bike advocates, pedestrians, neighborhood organizations, and the museums themselves in protecting the outlining areas of Golden Gate Park so that they will not be expanded due to the undue influence of increased automobile traffic. That was a demonstrative effort of how we can work together. And that worked. The voters said, we like the fact that you collaborated and that it proved a successful alliance by what used to be proponents and opponents on these kind of issues. Well, we extend that olive branch once again. They got the garage. The museums are on their way. We want to see them to be economically feasible and sound. Now in return, based on their own arguments that justify their actions back in 1999 and 2000, we asked for the same kind of respect in piloting this program. And for anybody out there to try to spin, I mean, when I've seen letters from those who are trying to oppose this, it almost borders on Karl Rove-like spin, to try to scare those in the disabled community, to try to scare our own economic workforce, our own workforce due to their own economic limitations, that they're going to shoulder an excessive burden, to try to scare people in any of our districts as a result of we're doing something that is completely reminiscent of what was done in 2000 to try to close down the park, is completely disingenuous, and frankly, it's dishonest. And it is incumbent upon all of us to really make sure that what is being discussed today, April 2006, is not the same argument was being discussed in 2000. Because if it was the same argument in 2000, then let's get rid of the garage and let's put parking spaces back in Golden Gate Park. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, it's been a long afternoon. We're about to hit 4 hours here. First of all, thank you to everybody concerned. I want to take a moment first to thank my staff member who has put a tremendous amount of time and effort and a lot of brain cells into this, and that's Cassandra Costello, who I think is in the other room. Cassandra Costello, our age, the three of us sitting here know the two aides that we have, and God knows, sometimes it seems like we could use 20, and they're doing the work at 20, really knocked themselves out on difficult pieces of legislation. She and certainly myself and people all involved in this issue have met around the table, stakeholders trying to address issues. I certainly want to thank Ms. Misner, who I see sitting on the other side, Mr. Kern, coming forth and putting it on the table. And I think that's what this is all about. First, there's the important process of putting it all on the table, seeing where we can concur, seeing where we disagree, seeing where we can, and it's not us personally, it's us doing our public jobs, and seeing how we can serve the public's needs. And sometimes there's a rub. To stay with the Shakespearean for a second. And herein lies the rub, but people have some perceptions, misperceptions, agreements, disagreements, misunderstandings. But I really think that, as I said earlier when we started this hearing, that it's very obvious that the situation is quite different. If somehow or other we were to be frozen in time, I guess it would be kind of nice because you could have some of that Dorian Gray effect and seem young forever and forever young. But in the end, we would all wither away like Dorian Gray, too. So I think the issue here is different. We do have a chronology, and I think we've seen that exposed here today. I did want to point out that the Youth Commission has supported this unanimously, I understand. The Small Business Commission has supported this as well. I also want to point out that we have a letter here that came to us from the director of the Concourse Authority, who has worked for 6 years with the Concourse, trying to meet some of the important issues around there. First of all, the building of the garage, working in conjunction with the folks who put together that garage, the MCCP, certainly working with the Rec and Park staff, certainly working with the public stakeholders, everyone concerned, the institutions. And I won't read the whole thing into the record, but certainly he does point out here in a communication that comes April the 12th at 12:24 p.m., I guess, to be precise. And he does say that with the completion this summer, where do I start? I'll jump in, son. Without argument, it is now crystal clear that the underground parking garage is an undeniable success. It represents a key resource for park visitors, 7 days a week. This is from Mike Elsie. Mike Elsie, again, having one of the most patient people I've ever met, who's actually worked real hard to get this all done around there. It represents a key resource for park visitors 7 days a week. With the completion this summer of the rehabilitated historic music concourse, the east end of Golden Gate Park represents the most unique and diverse concentration of visitor destinations, his words, not mine, on the planet. And I didn't know that Mr. Elsie was capable of such laudatory hyperbole, but here we go. A must-see. Some other people on the planet may feel differently, but it's a great spot. His words here coming up again. A must-see for every San Franciscan, and absolute on the itinerary of every visiting neighbor from across the globe. My point, any debate on the merits of Healthy Saturdays must consider and appreciate the facts, the new facts. There's a new successful underground garage in Golden Gate Park. There are new programs in place to improve safety, assure access, and enhance recreational enjoyment. The music concourse area has changed. It has improved. It's a new time. It's a new space. It should be a fresh debate. And I think that's an important point. And Mr. Elsie has, no horses in the race. He has really been balancing so many factors for many years, those of you who know Mr. Elsie, with the intent and the goal of meeting the objective, which was to develop what is developed there now. I think that's the important point, that we have been having a debate based on new facts. And I think those facts, have to be put into the equation. Not to do so is, not sincere nor genuine. And I think the genuine facts are on the table. I think we have a situation here where the issue of access is so clear. I don't know how many times we had to go over it and run our fingers over the map or go out there and see. You can get to the De Young 7 days a week, including now on Sundays for drop-off. You can go in there, you can drop off. You can get to so many other locations. We won't go over the whole thing again. You've got the new garage. And there are still, I forget the numbers, 11 or 1,200 parking spaces, that aren't too far away, even within the park. So, the issue here is one of having a vision for the future. And that vision for the future is now. And I would certainly appreciate it, colleagues, if we could send this to the full board with recommendation. Thank you.
Well, let me just say that I think I'm probably, out of the three of us, I did not support this. Well, it's not that I didn't support it, I didn't co-sponsor it. And I was kind of open and waiting to hear both sides of this argument. And I think that I have been, I think I've been rather convinced that this is worth at least a try. I think it would be important for us to at least, since we've been talking about this issue for so long, let's try it. Let's see where it takes us. And at the end of it, if we find out that it does not take us where we wanted to go, then we can change it. But I think it's important for us to at least try it. I think after hearing and looking at the attendance from Saturday to Sunday, I'm not really convinced that Saturdays are going to be that much less than Sundays because of this. After knowing myself that I've done the same thing that many other people have done, I've taken this big, huge truck and put a load of bicycles in it, and we've arrived at the park and we ride our bikes all day. And sometimes you just sit and watch other people having a great time. I think the museums are wonderful. I think I grew up in the Haight-Ashbury, and the museums way back then, they were all free. And so we would all go all the time. And I think that it's important for us to at least have something that people can do. And just being exposed and that close, people may decide to go in. They may decide that we will save up and we'll go to the museum this time. Who knows? So I didn't come willingly to this party, but I think I have been convinced now that this is at least an important trial for us to try out. So I will, I think we should go forward then with recommendation. Okay, and so are there any amendments? All right, let's approve the amendments first.
The amendments.
On the amendments, colleagues?
So moved.
Okay, so moved without objection, and then on the body of the legislation itself as amended. All right, so
Motion to move forward for recommendation?
yes, without objection. So moved.
Yeah, no.